video.
Don't worry, you won't see this anymore.
Okay.
It's on.
Yeah.
Are we all set?
Yep.
Okay, everyone, welcome to our policy meeting, April 18th. We have the full committee here and we have some administration joining us to help out with some policies. We have Kristen and Joe. So, you want me to just jump right in?
Let's
Is that
do it.
okay, Frank? And Talia and the team? All right, why don't we start right off where we left off with our sports extracurricular policies. We've been trying to discuss these for a while now, and Frank, I think you've let Kristen and Joe know some of our struggles, right,
Yep.
with language. I think if I am saying this correctly, and Tim and Arby, tell you, correct me if I'm wrong, we started to struggle a little bit with the definition of infractions and potential violations. And then we decided to take a step back and invite you guys to join us so that we can understand and appreciate your perspective before we just had our own perspective. Does that seem fair? That's a starting place.
Yeah.
Tim, does that seem good?
Sounds right.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
So do you want to start at penalties or the infractions itself?
I'm gonna pull it up.
I have it up too.
Oh, up there,
Yeah.
okay.
So Joe and Kristen have re-looked at this and have been evaluating it. So I added a couple of things to what they were talking about for the penalties. And they went back and looked at it, and RG's comment of it's a little harsh was something that they brought up. So they've adjusted the proposal. So you guys want to talk about that for the violations and penalties?
Rock,
Maybe the
paper,
intent.
scissors, or do you
Yeah.
wanna? Okay.
Yeah, and the
So-
intent for the penalties.
Yeah,
Sure. So I guess first I have to comment that the word, we talked about even the word penalties sounded more like an athletic sort of thing. So we tend to stick with consequences. So maybe even the language in that, calling it a consequence, might be a
I'm fine
little
with
more fitting than a penalty. Sort of seems like we need to throw a flag or something. But so for our first violation, we had thought about
I just got that joke. Sorry. Throw a flag. It's kind of funny.
Thank you.
It took me a second. I was like, oh, that's actually really funny.
So for the first violation, we were talking about how 20 consecutive school days was quite substantial. And that really is a good chunk of a student's participation in a sport or an extracurricular or something like that. So we would propose reducing that down to 10 consecutive days for the bulleted item number 2. Whereas in bulleted item number 4, it could be reduced from 10 to 5 if a student is able to participate in a health evaluation. So if they were to receive outside counseling, their primary care provider was able to support them in some way, we would like to see that. So that way a student is able to have a more restorative approach to, their infraction. Joe, did you want to add to that right now or just continue?
Yeah, part of the rationale for the time switch is there's different number of contests for different sports. So 20-game suspension in a sport where you play, or 20-day in a sport where there's 10 games, there's some inequities there. So, making a smaller number to impact a smaller duration of the season seemed to make some sense from an equity standpoint.
Would it make more sense to say number of games instead of number of days?
We've gone back and forth, and at one point this policy specified number of games.
Okay.
It was a percentage of the maximum allowable games in each sport.
Yeah.
And, we switched back to this. The committee that reviewed it at that time felt more comfortable with days. And I think from our perspective, we're not super dialed into the duration of the time. We're more concerned with, what happens after that, the message that gets communicated, and how we could help,
Right.
a student that's struggling moving forward.
If you were going to go to percentage of games, this would be difficult because it's an extracurricular as well. So, they have National Honor Society or the Kiwanis Club. They have those
one
ones.
play.
Yeah, or one
Yeah.
play, right?
Right.
What are you doing there? So that's why that would be difficult to be able to say what percentage of it.
I agree with the decision in the past to switch it to days.
Yeah. It seemed to work, and like we said, it was more restorative because kids are kids. You're going to make mistakes, and we want to be able to show that you can repair this, you can get help, you can get support. So that's what we would propose there. And the same thing would go.
Can I just ask a question before you do that?
Oh, sure.
Just because I want to, Trisha mentioned something. Joe, can you talk about like why schools have consequences and what like the purpose of the consequences are for extracurricular and athletic codes? Because I think that was one of the bigger questions.
Yeah.
Because then it makes more sense when we talk about days, understanding the purpose of those days.
Yeah, I think it's a deterrent. And I think, different schools view their codes differently. I could say from my perspective, like, I've spent a lot of time revising this over the years, and we want this to be something that's educational. Like, I think the idea of a deterrent, student A signs their name to a piece of paper that they're not gonna do these things, that's not deterring them from making a mistake. This should be an educationally sound, document that we use to educate students and help students identify what their issues are and move forward.
And just to interject, but not only that, but when they leave post high school, if a kid, or a young adult ran into something, isn't that what we want them to do? We want them to be able to know, hey, I can go get support here, or hey, I can fix this, or hey, I can own up and self-report something. And
I was gonna
So-
ask, we talked a lot about self-referral, and I think we were unsure if that was of value or not. I know I was.
Mhm.
I don't want to speak for the others, but, is there a value in that? Who benefits from that?
Joe, you've been here long enough to see how that has worked over the years.
It has worked. We've had students that were struggling with some type of chemical addiction and needed help. And we didn't want, not being able to participate in your extracurricular activity to be a reason to not come to a trusted adult and say, I need help with this issue. And I think that e-cigarettes and vape have really magnified the need for that, because these are marketed towards students and they're designed to be very addictive to students. It's a whole new area that, we have to try and manage in a school district. So over the years, there have been times where we've gotten students help for what they need help with because of that clause and that policy.
Mhm. We did say that we may want to consider adding under the self-referral portion, that they must participate in an evaluation by a healthcare provider as they would with a first offense. So if you're willing to self-refer, we're still hoping that you're going to get that help and support. So that was something we would like to add in there.
I think that's where I was kind of stumbling, because it wasn't clear as to, are they going to be treated very differently? Are they going to use this to game the system?
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was being a little suspicious about it. But if it's legit,
Yep.
and you do have, like you say, there are going to be consequences, even though you're self-referring.
Yep.
You're going to still have to do some stuff to make this work. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yes, so remind me, just because I just got connected, if you self-report, is there a penalty or is it just you have to,
Currently with the code,
participate in the evaluation?
that's currently what the code states. And then if there's a second violation, then if they do it again, then it's counted as a second violation.
Good, okay, fine. Yeah, that was something I was struggling with, was I'm gonna out myself and then I'm gonna have to sit out.
Yep. So this is like, I'm owning up to it and I'm going to get support because I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
If I do this again though, then I'm skipping down to the second offense, and there will be, other consequences.
Okay, so this is kind of a first offense by
Yes.
self-report.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the way that this is structured for, a first violation could be considered relatively. It gets more progressive as it goes.
If somebody has already been through violation number 1, maybe violation number 2, and now I self-report, where am I on the sequence?
So I think that that's inherently
That's actually-
in the self-referral, that it's gonna skip down to it's gonna go to the third violation, which actually, we can speak to in a moment, but
Is that in there?
the third violation?
The self-referral section.
For self-referral. So it's like if somebody does a first and second, and then before they get to a third violation, they do
Yeah, we
self-referral.
stop at a second in the reference to
Yeah,
that paragraph around self-referral.
I think self-referral, my understanding of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is like your first time, this is this, right? And then
But it could happen.
it could.
I mean, if
yeah.
I've been busted a couple times, I'm thinking, I might as well just,
Oh,
I
no.
might as well go tell Joe that,
Mhm.
I did it again.
Mhm.
And then there's no consequence, even though they've already had consequence twice.
Right.
I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, it is, it's not clear,
No.
but it's only reporting before you have the first
Would you want us to
violation.
put something clear in there stating that the
Yeah.
self-referral must
I think
occur
that's-
prior to first violation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A student who self-reports a violation of its code prior to being presented with a first violation.
Do you want to write that? Yeah. That sounded good.
Quick.
Well, I added a couple of the other things they already said, because I got that.
Mhm.
So we're saying there is no self-referral after that. So if
That's
someone,
my read.
so we're not encouraging kids to self-referral, basically hide after that? I'm not saying we should or shouldn't.
Well, I think they can still self-refer even if they've been in violation
Would
once
you
before.
though?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
It should be done for the-
But
Yeah, then
Wait,
you're
is this
basically
a
like,
year?
right, kick me out.
But have we articulated the length of this?
We really haven't.
Because that's the other question, because now you're saying that I'm going,
Mhm.
Right.
do we say it's a yearly thing, or do we say like, okay, you get a first violation your freshman year, and then you
But
are
this
good your
covers
sophomore
middle
year, then,
school too.
right, and then your right, so then you're 2 years down the road, you do another one, that's your second violation?
Well, it's confusing because we say, the way this was written before, any future violation will be handled as a second offense unless self-reported by the student and the building principal in consultation. This doesn't make sense when you rewrite it, but
That's where I was tripping up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we could,
Let me ask you, is this counting of sequences, counting of violations, I should say, an annual event? Or is it
I don't know that answer.
So it's kind
over the course of your time here,
It's been career.
career?
of career.
Yeah.
Sheesh. So career is 6 years? In theory, it could be.
Yes, theoretically, yes.
Do you agree with that?
I don't know.
I don't know that I do, because if you have code day or code night theoretically every year, that's suggesting that it's an annual
Reset.
reset, just as our annual trainings, right? It's something that you have to do every year, so I sort of,
It seems to me a little harsh if I did something in 7th grade and then it carries with me all the way to, when I'm much more mature as a junior or senior, maybe? I don't know. I don't have to deal with any of this, though in practice, it's you guys. So,
When you talk about an annual, is there a clean slate or is there a record kept?
So I've seen in some districts that I've been in, I'll just be honest, I've seen it where it's, you do it a year, and then the next year is another violation, and then it's a clean sweep, and then it's again, and it's again, it's not continual, right? It's like, you have the year, and then clean sweep the next year. Joe, what have you seen? Both?
I've seen both.
And what is the predominant one in most districts, do you know?
Annual clean slate, I think, is more common.
How do you feel as athletic director on
I kind of agree with Trish's point. Somebody makes a mistake in 7th grade and again, as a junior, by that point, I think there should be a clean
that? Or
slate.
even 9th grade to 11th grade,
Yeah.
9th grade to 10th grade.
you do mature so much
Because we have
throughout
had
your career.
Mhm.
I mean,
students that have careers.
other side, you could have a kid who does this every year,
They did.
and they
Yeah,
run
plays a
through,
clean
yeah,
sweep game.
and it plays a clean sweep game and does this every year. I mean, you could have that as
Terrible
well,
game.
right?
It was a terrible game. I'm gonna
Reset.
Another flag on that
Right.
one.
You get to the third violation, and all of a sudden next year, clean sweep, and they do it all over again. So
I mean, it could be different issues too, right? Because
Absolutely.
you get caught vaping and you could cure yourself of that. but
and then you have another issue.
then a different issue.
I personally feel I like the annual. I didn't want to say anything until everybody had it.
Is a record kept so that the day comes when,
Yes.
it's, even though there's been
Yes.
a reset, you know that 3 years
Yes.
ago, this kid did have a problem.
Yeah,
This
they
is
all-
not nuts, this
Yeah,
is
they
not
all
the
keep
first time
track
I've
of
heard
all
this.
those
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a bigger question before we can get penalties and violations. Like, look, do we do it annually?
Okay, so
And that should
I
be,
think we're gonna need to take some time I've got it open, so I
Yeah.
can just, assuming I can stay connected, why don't I just make some notes in it?
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
a
idea.
And then,
So there won't be.
by the way, I also did ask the attorney today, if we have to have a hearing to adopt this. Because a typical code of conduct, you must have a hearing. So
Yeah.
a public hearing beforehand. I didn't know about extracurricular code of conduct, so if we were, could we just say we have this at the hearing at the reorg meeting and shoot for this to be finished by the reorg meeting? That, because if we're looking at it now, like, and then we do a hearing on this anyways, even if we don't have to, I think it'd be good to get public comment. So do them all at one time.
okay, that idea.
I like that.
Okay, I lost the connection, so maybe you can do it.
I'll do it.
Frank.
As long as I keep it,
I'm trying to
do
connect
you mind if I do it as a comment?
That's what she, yeah.
That's what I was
Okay.
trying to do.
All right.
And then we can worry about language.
Oh, hold on. I'm commenting on something that I don't know I want to comment on. I'm just gonna put it up here.
I was trying to scurry through NISBO recommendations, but then I ran out of time before this meeting to see if they had.
There's a lot to cover.
I know,
We use a NISBA one to make this recommendation,
the self-referral part,
not the self-referral. That's something they already have, and I believe that's something you've had in this
that's
district for years.
district specific.
Correct, Joe?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask, the highlighted things, is that from NISBA? Like the yellow
That
highlights?
looks like a comment.
I'm trying to make a comment right now.
See on the right, that's saying that Frank highlighted that,
No, the NISBA one's been added to this
and
now.
he made that comment.
Oh, okay.
That's what that is, yeah.
We've basically thrown out the old one and combined NISBA's with this one, the extracurricular code of conduct, and combined these two together now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Are you making a comment? Am
I did.
connected anymore?
I hope it did. I hope it worked.
It says I'm
Yeah, it says-
connected, but I don't see live.
So, I think it worked.
Yeah, I think it's down. It's not on the section, the self-report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just below.
I don't know what happened here. I didn't
Oh.
even know where to make the comment correctly, so. I put it way down low
Oh, I
by
see. It's
accident.
connected
It
to
just,
the-
for some reason,
okay.
it kept on going there. No idea why. So,
I see it.
so are we good to move on with violations again? Or should we know it's annual. The self-referral, do you want to still tackle that? Or are we good on that?
I think we need to clean up, well, are we limiting it to just the first time? Because the way this is written, it says any future violation will be handled as a second offense unless self-reported by the student.
Then it becomes another first offense,
That's
another
what I'm
clean sweep.
Yeah, I
confused
think
about.
we'd
What
lose
is
that.
that?
I would take out, yeah, the unless self-reported by the student. Any future violation will be handled as a second offense.
Period.
Yeah, period.
Yeah.
And now that it's annually, it does lessen
Right.
that.
Yep.
I got that.
Or should we say second or third offense as appropriate? You could self-report and then you could have a second offense and then you could have a third offense.
But, so we're agreeing that there's no self-referral after a first offense?
That's how I'm reading this.
That's how this,
And
but,
is
But
that
again,
how
be-
it's been applied in
That is
practice?
how it's been applied.
okay.
Yeah. And I guess if it's annual, then it's, like, if you get your second, you know what I mean? You can start again fresh next year. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm wondering, just because of one of Tim's comments, should we have something in here that says you know, students with multiple infractions throughout their athletic career, because right, we're talking about this annual thing, may be, do you know what I mean? Like we may need to reflect upon that. So like from 7th grade to 12th grade, if you've had 8 self-reporting, or do you see what I'm saying?
You have some language in here that allows for some discretion.
Okay.
And I don't know if needs to be spelled out much more than that, but
Okay.
I think we gotta have some understanding that you got some kid in here, and this is the 8th time he's been in here.
Okay, we have discretion.
Even though it started
Okay.
in 7th grade, now we're in junior, there's a trend here.
Okay.
Would you ever address that, Joe, as like an eligibility issue before the season even got started?
Yeah, I think
I mean, they're not in good standing. If a child is getting in that much trouble and they have 9 infractions that deal with vaping or drug use or alcohol, I can't imagine that being an eligible student who is in good standing, because behaviorally wise, that's not a good standing student.
Okay.
there was something that we read today
Athletic
on
abilities.
Bethlehem's that addressed that.
Like a
People
clear
that
to
might be
play
like
kind of
because
thing, like when you're
because
submitting all
that
that
went out the
paper, like I
window.
feel like
Starter.
that's part of it.
Really big and really fast. We'll give you another
I
chance.
mean, isn't our eligibility policy currently just academic?
Well, I mean, it's kind of in here, because on the first page, says the Board of Education has the authority to establish reasonable standards as prerequisites for eligibility for co-curricular and extracurricular activities, right? So I think it belongs in here.
But I want to just throw a caveat into this is, let's say you have a student who's troubled. 7th and 8th grade, they're getting a lot of support, but they have multiple issues. 9th grade, again, multiple issues, maybe a couple suspensions, but yet a lot of supports, SEL supports in school going forward. Athletics are the only thing that is keeping the student in school and engaged in learning. Do you then, even though you know you're going to get multiple infractions and you're dealing with that, but yet you know it's the best opportunity for the kid, then do you take them out of it? Like that is, because that came from actually something you said to me once, like in support of that, right? And for a child. So that is like, I'm just thinking about that is if we go too harsh, then we lose that opportunity sometimes. So I like the ability to set a balance. That little bit of ambiguity is not a bad thing, I think, on this one.
I also don't like the idea of writing a policy worried about the worst offender.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think this is one where, this one, as Joe said, this is an education
let's
policy.
assume we're gonna have pretty good compliance. And
Joseph, you ever had a kid who had multiple infractions that couldn't do this? Or was it, right? And there was an eligibility where they just didn't do it, correct?
So we don't address, this, as I read it, kind of addresses you're participating, you violate the code of conduct, these are the consequences for your continued participation. But we don't in here anywhere lay out how to be eligible, right? We say we can set the standard, but I think we need to
Right.
add a paragraph that describes,
We could
right?
say
Because you can
student,
decide before a season even starts that this student just isn't eligible. to
you could say
participate.
student has to be in good academic and behavioral standing. I mean, that's the typical ambiguous
Right,
statement
and
that
that's-
most districts put in policies.
I think that's fine.
Mhm.
And then if they're not in good, like what's good can be 65, right? And getting a kid to go through, like that's what is passing this.
Right, and you can have that be based on, like the language we just talked about
Yeah.
taking out.
So right towards the top, you're saying some positive message about being eligible and encouraged and,
Right.
a statement of pride. So a positive statement in
Yeah, I
here.
think I didn't write it yet, but
I
it
get
could be something like, general eligibility requirements for
I'm putting in the second.
participation.
Yeah, here.
What do we call it, co-curricular and extracurricular activities include remaining in good academic and,
Don't mind the spelling.
yeah, we can fix spelling, just
We'll play
Yeah.
around.
get it down.
Extracurricular activities. Did you say?
involved, I can't
Yeah,
see.
eligibility requirements, co-curricular and good activities to be in good academic
Standing,
and behavioral
Good
standings.
academic and behavioral standing.
that's fine, I think that,
Joe,
That is
And
that
then
is a
we can
typical
add-
line.
we can add in something if you want more discretion in this to say, at the discretion of the
As determined by,
building principal in consultation with the athletic director. Just had it. Athletic director / advisor, right? That's the language that's in the self-referral paragraph.
Mhm.
Say something like that, right? This way it gives you some discretion, like if they're not, it's one of those kids who academics is the only reason, or athletics is the only reason they're here, let's say, and even if they're screwed up, you wanna let them participate, because you know it's motivating them to get on a better path.
I wrote participant will be at the discretion of the building principal and or athletic director / advisor.
I think that works.
Like
thinking about what Trish said, have we ever had a situation where somebody was permanently made ineligible? Okay,
3 that I can remember.
3.
Over
3 in the
35
last-
years.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's good. That is not a lot
It's a lot,
that we can help.
that's right.
And I've had one, and I've had a couple in my career.
And in the one case, the student reapplied for eligibility and to the principal in writing and, participated in a rehabilitation program and did drug testing and really made a difference for this person.
Again, you said this from the very beginning. This isn't a consequence policy. This is an education policy, right? We're to help kids, not hurt them. So that makes sense. So violations?
Yep, so back to violations. So.
Do we
did
like, by
you-
the way, before we do that, do we like the 10 to 5 instead of the 20, the first violation? Or do you still,
Yes.
It's better.
do you think it's too much?
I like it. I think you were
So-
right. I think 20 is too much.
Mhm. So yeah, that one would be 10, and then,
And you said the 4th bullet changes too, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
it would
I'll
go
take
10 down to 5 if they were willing to seek care and support through a healthcare provider.
The word 5 in there too.
Yeah, we even have teen intervene, that sort of thing.
No, I mean, right in front of the bullet, the numbers, you have 20.
For the second
Oh,
bullet.
Thank you. That is 6 already. So, RG, your thought on that? I saw. a little
Oh, no, I
hesitation.
thought it had a typo in it, but I think the first violation is good. Now I'm moving on to second.
Okay,
Keep going, because you're in that same line after the numeric 5, yeah.
there we go. Makes sense. Very good. All right, second violation?
And then we were also looking to reduce the second violation from 30 days down to 20, but looking for expertise on that. Is it, what was that? Admin have adjusted,
Yeah, it was just.
just your own note, okay.
Yeah.
So moving that to 20, which would essentially be like a month of participation, give or take a few days. I don't know what your thoughts were.
Again, this is annual.
And these are up to, this isn't a set,
Oh, that's,
oh,
this is not an up to.
this is,
This
it's
isn't,
20 days.
This
Yeah.
is a fixed-
this isn't an at least. Yeah, no, that's
Or
actually,
it's,
Yeah,
this one's 20. It says,
Yes.
there's no range
yeah,
here.
there's no range. First one was 10 or 5.
What
Right.
is school days though? I mean, they have practice on Saturdays.
We do it in session school days, so
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
So they can come and practice on that Saturday.
If their infractions are up,
I do not like the whichever is longer.
which one?
where's that?
Um,
Oh, at the
Second
bottom
bullet.
of this, okay.
So wait, they're missing Saturday practice, but it doesn't count to their tally?
Correct.
That doesn't seem fair.
that's-
Yeah.
That, it doesn't seem right to me.
Is that how you do it, Joe, or no?
What are you asking?
So when you're doing 20 days, is it calendar days or is it school days?
It's school days.
And if they have a practice on Saturday, we don't count that?
They have to miss it, but it doesn't count toward them. Toward them.
Oh, actually, you're right. We go 6 days a week.
Yeah,
We count the Saturday.
so I don't think
So
you
it's
want
gotta
to
be
say
written
school
here.
days.
Yeah.
We count the Saturday.
So,
And I think we should,
but,
but that's not how
So
it's
it should
written.
just be days.
yeah, it should be
Just take
Saturday
the
through
word
Monday,
school.
like,
Oh, I see.
if you're doing Sunday, you're adding another day in there, so you just wanna be clear, which one do you want, cause 30 days, Monday to Saturday is different than adding that Sunday day and you're getting, so just wanna be clear when we write
I
it.
would just say, if we're gonna leave it at 20, I would just say consecutive days.
Give them Sundays,
Can I write calendar days,
sure,
just
Well, you
because
could
in the
also
future,
add-
in all of them.
You could also add a club that is doing something on a Sunday.
Mhm.
The musicals,
You could
the
have
musicals on a
multiple
Sunday.
let's do that. So we're gonna write consecutive calendar days.
You were there, I saw it.
Yeah,
I just wanna write calendar because somebody in the future might.
Yeah.
Well, I said days
Yeah.
and like, yeah. Because when's your hard stop for the kids? I just wanna make sure that we get you
Two
out.
hours.
Oh, no, I'm okay right now.
Okay, is it like 3:30 though is your hard stop? or-
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, about that.
we just, I wanna make sure we get you out on time.
Thank you.
I saw you look and I go, all right, when's your hard stop?
No, I just make it stop buzzing.
Yeah. Anything else on that second violation?
I don't like the whichever is longer,
Okay,
because I think that if you're, if you started basketball in November and you had your second violation, basketball doesn't end until March, like you're done.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. I think it's just the 20
Yeah,
days.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right,
Strike.
all right.
I agree with you.
Kelly, if you ever wanna say anything, feel free.
Oh, I would, yeah.
If you think I'm
If
still on
you
the
think I'm
spot,
digging away
Yeah.
the farm, feel
Yeah.
free to, like,
yes, feel free to.
Well, let me ask you that question as a student.
Yeah,
Do
but
you feel that it
don't
should?
make her represent all students.
No, but as your,
That's
as
a
a
lot of
student, no,
responsibility.
as herself,
Yes.
do you
that's
feel
better.
like this is something like, when you look at these code of conducts, do you feel like it's something that should be punishing or something that should be growth?
Grow, yeah. I think this is like getting better, yeah. I like the changes.
Third violations? So this one, or,
Can I just
yeah,
throw in one thing here? We're talking about first violation, second violation, as if all violations are equally serious,
Mhm.
okay? We're just talking about numerically. And we're gonna have sometimes when one kid vaped, another kid did something a lot more serious than that,
mhm.
and we're just gonna treat it as a violation. Second violation, first
I think
violation.
we get to that section later,
Let's get to
Tim,
the
which
infractions.
we might have to circle back, but yes, someone could like do their senior skip day,
Right.
and well, granted, that might be the end, but, and someone else could be selling weed.
But I
right?
think
Like,
you have to look at this in two different ways though.
You know,
This is a added consequence to an already school consequence, right? So unless you're doing the outside of school stuff, right? That we, let's say you said selling weed and they get caught outside of school and they had never came into school. But if something happened during the school day, they're gonna have a school
Okay.
discipline already. So
Right.
there's a good chance there could be like 5-day suspensions already or school discipline. This is added on top of that.
So can I ask you this?
Yeah.
The school discipline then has
Level,
levels that are more attentive to the seriousness of the crime.
yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
These code of conducts are added to, since it's a privilege, not a right, in extracurricular and athletic codes.
I'm good.
School is a right.
We had just third violation or
This is a great conversation. About it.
No, it is great. So we had discussed the third violation. The student will be suspended from all extracurricular activities for the remainder of their high school career, which sounds a bit wild, except there is the disclaimer. However, a student may apply for reinstatement to activities after 1 year of suspension. So there is that appeal disclaimer in there. I didn't know what everyone thought on that because it seems very like harsh. Oh my goodness, right? The example, you mess up in 7th grade, you're done forever. But it does have an appeal process.
Doesn't it
What
nullify
about
this
our
if we make
annual
it
reset?
annually though?
Well, it's that
no,
whole violation needs to be different.
You could get your third, well, I think you'd look at it on a finite school year period, right? Because you could get your third violation during the year and then you'd be done for the rest of your career absent applying for reinstatement. But you could get to your second violation every year
Right,
and then clean up your act and you'd never get to this provision.
so we could leave it like this if you wanted to and just say, then they have to reapply for eligibility.
Right.
So the third violation would not be annual.
Once you get to the third violation,
You're done.
you're done unless you apply for an granted.
That's how I
reinstatement.
understood it, was,
So as long as, I just want to clarify, because the annual thing,
After 1 year of suspension, so that's like from the time of your third violation. So if my third violation is today, then I go till 2024 to pay. That's how the year is calculated.
yeah, if we're doing calendar, yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, that's how I'm getting it. So, just looking at the note,
I won't put the
saying
word calendar.
administration would like to discuss a disciplinary action with the policy, I don't know what that means.
that was just in conversation. We had really, we like the appeal in it. We're kind of, ignore that. You could just ignore that. Yep. Yeah, that's probably the one, the highlighted one we want to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we lose you.
Yeah, and then actually, so one thing I immediately noticed, if we do keep this in, we keep saying student athletes, but it really needs to be
Oh, I can
students,
change that.
not student athletes, just say students.
It's actually, it's got to be extracurricular and co-curricular code of conduct.
Yep, and
Because
then,
this is actually, if it says code of conduct, we refer to the school.
yep, and then on that third bullet where it says student dash athletes, just students in that section.
Curriculum.
Yeah, the highlighted one, so, yep, right up top there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Probably just do a universal replacement.
But this one, I'd love to hear administration's thinking
Oh, you talked about this one.
of like
Student athlete in there again.
participating versus attending.
I can remove it if you, it's,
Yeah.
it's,
I was assuming something else, sorry. I was
So just for racial
so.
increase.
Joe, you talked about this one, how difficult it is and then not, and
I really struggled with this one. With the third bullet, just the supervision and application of that.
I mean, the intent is we don't want kids to drink or use alcohol or drugs,
Mhm.
right?
And I
Yep.
think it can be like.
Like, do we need this bullet?
Well, I feel like the first two bullets cover it.
Right.
That's what we said today. We don't want you to possess it and we don't want you to use it.
Like, I feel like we're getting to a space that's very difficult. Like, I don't know. I don't want to speak for everyone, but
It's really difficult and challenging to enforce that.
Just by
not only
happenstance,
to
like the-
enforce, but there's just the way this was written, like, I used the example at our last meeting, let's say a few of I have family over for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
We have wine at dinner. My daughter is there.
so she has to leave.
She's got her first violation,
Yeah, she's gotta go.
unless she leaves immediately
Unless
when
she's
she sees me.
self-reports.
Yes.
That's about-
And what's immediately? After one drink or two?
Yeah, like every way I look at this, I just,
I worry that it's a bit granular in the sense that, yes, that would be, you're not supposed to possess it, you're not supposed to have it, you're not supposed to use it. I think it's inherently in that, but I agree with you on this.
okay.
That's where our thoughts were.
I think as a school board and the policies of this district, I think the only things we can control are what happens on the things that we can control.
Can't control, but we can say like, hey,
We can comment, we can have
We can
policies,
set the expectation of.
we can set the expectation.
yes,
But something like this is, when you say you must leave immediately, pretty nebulous term.
RG brought up a great point last meeting, like what if your child is the DD? Don't we want to encourage children to be DDs, or should they, I guess, I mean, we don't want to encourage, but
Not being there at all.
I don't know.
And just the history of it,
They're moving
this is
to-
probably the fourth time I've been allowed and revising this.
Oh.
It swings back and forth.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can
We put
imagine.
together a committee that wants
Understood.
very rigid and structured, and the last time this was reviewed, it was a very, it was a group of people that wanted more consequences for behavior.
Right.
So I agree with Talia, I like the direction.
Well, so I have one question
Good
though,
job,
that I hope we never have to deal with here. I didn't see anything here about arrest or probation or sentencing or anything like that.
It's
Like,
an infraction.
well, I just think of incidents that I've dealt with over the years where somebody may have been dealing, an illicit drug, or they were attempted murder, or, like there might have been something where they're out on
Harassment.
probation or harassment, right? And like a major issue that they were arrested for, an under pending investigation. There's nothing in here that says we allow them to play sports or not. So somebody who, let's say, because they might not be suspended, because if it wasn't outside of school thing and it didn't impact school, they'd still have a right to come to school. So that's my
so
question.
This gets
I
into like
I know,
some
this is your wheelhouse.
corrections law
Yep, this is your
issues.
wheelhouse.
Was it Article 23A?
Yeah,
So if someone's just charged with something in
right.
the employment context, you can take adverse action.
we used to, just so you know. I don't know if it was right or wrong,
So-
but in the district I was in, if you were charged, you weren't allowed to play
Yeah, I mean, it would
until it was
be
cleared.
legal to do so, my understanding, not acting as a lawyer.
Yeah,
To exclude someone from participation for just being charged.
don't know if you guys, I don't know, I missed
Decide
what you're
if
doing
you
with this, if we're
wanna-
taking out
You
or not,
said it
but
is legal?
It is.
I don't know if you'd wanna, are you taking this part out, the hosting and drinking part?
I think that's where we.
I would vote for
Yeah.
removing bullets.
So that's, my only question is just gonna be the
You're okay
chart.
with that, Tim?
Yes,
Getting
Yeah.
rid of bullets free?
Perfect. My question is going to be the charging and arrest. If somebody, has an infraction and is arrested, are we gonna allow them to play? Or is it something where you say they can't participate until after the courts have been decided?
So
It's a hard decision.
Any kind of arrest, let's say you got arrested, so you pay your parking tickets.
I was thinking like if you were speeding through a school zone, right? Because 20 over is a felony, and I'm not saying that we should do that.
We're not
But I'm just saying like you can get arrested for that. So, but that's much different than like attempted
I-
murder that you're saying, so.
Here's my take on it. I think if it has nothing to do with school, right, so there's no
Mhm.
school violation that you would be addressing as a violation of some school
Yeah.
rules, and it's pending elsewhere, and it's a
Then do
crime,
it.
but it has nothing to do with school, then I would leave it out. But
You just look, I have no affiliation one way or the other. I just wanna make sure I throw it out there and have a discussion with
I
it,
don't know if-
because what I don't wanna have happen is it happen. And
We
then,
don't have a
because
policy.
I've seen this where people are going, like, literally, they come to a football game with a picket sign saying, this student should not be playing. I mean, I had that happen to me once. So I just want the policy to be able to support us one way or the other.
I may be comparing apples and oranges, but if an employee got arrested, charged with a crime, was out and a pending
Depends on the crime.
trial, would that person be allowed to work here?
Depends on the crime. Depends on the arrest.
Oh,
There's
sounds
law
like-
about that. So,
Can you apply that same sort of rule to students?
Good.
I don't know. I'm of the belief that you're innocent until proven guilty. So you've been charged, but you haven't gone to trial yet. You haven't been convicted. Your
nothing to do
status
with the
here
school.
is, it's not a violation of school rules. Your status here hasn't changed, in my mind.
we can just not have it in there. I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure we,
I mean, the child
Yeah,
can still come to school, right?
They have the right to come to school. It's the
So-
question is, are you gonna give them the privilege of participating in after-school activities? That's the question. And I just wanna make sure you walk
Yeah.
yourselves through it, so then we're clear that it was done.
Were there picket signs about them going to school?
There was a lot,
There's
yeah.
pickets about
Yeah,
everything.
there was a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I can't get
I
into
mean, I could
details,
see
but
depending on the
it was a major issue.
potential crime, but
It was,
I see more issues.
It was an
unless you can
assault type crime.
differentiate it.
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. So, okay. So we leave out.
I mean, we have in here things like bullying,
Mhm.
right? So would you want to add something to address violent incidents? Involvement in,
Joe, how do you feel about that? I mean, like, somebody who's violent outside the school or does something like that, would you typically not have them participate in the past, or if they've been arrested for a violent behavior? Like, what have you done here in
Oh,
the
that's
past?
such a difficult question, because if someone is arrested for selling weed, it's a code of conduct violation, and possession of marijuana. But this whole section, these are all new.
let's
So
say,
we wouldn't have done any of this before. Well,
so let's say you get charged in a domestic incident as a student. What, if anything, would you do? If it were me, I might pull the kid aside and say, hey, you got other things you need to focus on.
But it brings it back to your
But
point, like it's not
it's not.
affiliated to school, it has nothing
Yeah,
to do
we
with
have-
it. It's,
who's had it, those students accountable for something.
So can we look at this possession or use of drug or alcohol on school property?
What-
Should it
which
say
one?
that for the violations then?
No.
Okay, you shouldn't say on school property.
I
Because
don't think we
distribution or
wanna
otherwise
lim-
making
I don't think
available.
we wanna limit it,
Okay, because
right?
distribution or otherwise making available of for other students and student athletes, or take away student athletes, any students, any alcohol, drugs, paraphernalia, narcotics, or anything,
Yep.
that could be right there. There's your violation outside of school or inside of school. That's why,
I think we're acknowledging that these things could happen away from the school,
okay,
but if they come to the district's attention, you wanna be able to act on them in addressing participation in extracurricular, co-curricular activities, right?
I struggle. I understand why we're doing this. I struggle even with that, because I just feel like the ones you're gonna know about versus the ones you don't, the ones you have evidence for versus the ones you don't, it
Yep.
just seems like a huge can of worms. I understand our intent. We're trying to promote good behavior.
But at the same time, we gotta give these people some tools to work with.
Yeah, no, I
You know,
know,
I mean,
but we also don't
give me
wanna,
something.
but do we wanna set them up with a tool that's impossible to
No,
apply
but,
fairly?
okay, well, I don't know if you're gonna do that,
Well,
and apply
I think-
fairly. I'm just saying, I would want them to be able to hang their hat on something.
True, true.
Yeah, I think there's always gonna be the situation where you can't prove it, you don't have enough information, but when you do, I think we have to put you in a position to be able to act on that.
True. I don't disagree with that. I do think it puts you in a terrible spot if you know there's 10 other kids doing the same exact thing, and you're proof on one, it's like.
Yep.
so I've had that happen, and I'm sure Joe's had that happen where if something happens. I had a hazing incident years ago, you can look it up in the media, and 5 students were disciplined for the hazing issue, yet 15 other students were present and were a part of it, but there was no evidence showing it, right? So this is, you only can deal with the evidence that you have, and that becomes where we are as officials in schools, is we can only discipline or work on what we have, not on our assumptions.
Which I guess is what you're used to anyway with even stuff happening at school, right?
yeah, you're given
we
what
have
you're
to do
given, and I'm sure there's a ton that I don't know.
Karma's
What's
gonna be a
going on,
bitch for
but-
those other 15 kids, I'm telling you, coming around.
When I started the original code of conduct, actually, for each infraction, they clarified on school property or at a school-sponsored event. And we changed it because there were students that actually were articulating on that. Well, I can do this, that's at school, you can't do anything about it. So that's, that was the reason why that changed. Students became tuned into the fact that.
Things
that was
align.
Which is unfortunate. I don't think we want to encourage, I don't want to go back to that. With that way.
Mhm.
Is there anything else in the penalties?
Yeah, what is
Okay.
an unexcused absence?
So we could better tell you what is an excused absence. So like if you were to go on a college visit, a medical situation, family death or something like that. I think there's like 6 of them that we put out in our handbook. So it's like anything other than that, like we don't have any reason, you're just not here and.
They're spelled out in the,
Yeah, like if you're
Yes.
sick, that's an excused absence.
so if I'm a parent and I let attendants know my daughter won't be at school today, but I don't give a reason.
It might be marked as unexcused,
Unless you
yeah.
give a
And then
reason.
that would
So
be a
prior notice.
violation.
Right.
Yeah.
In and of itself.
But if
is
you're a
not-
parent and your child's not gonna be in school, you typically have a reason, right? Like they're not feeling well.
You might not want to tell the reason.
Right. But then it's an unexcused because we have to report it, right? So then we're stuck.
Mhm.
We have, see, this is the thing is like, I get where you're coming from, but then we're legally have to report excused or unexcused
Mhm.
absences. And we have to, I mean, there's audits that actually come through and check your notes and check your attendance stuff. So, and every year at reorg meeting, you appoint me and the building principals as the attendance person to be able to certify it as a state. So that becomes the issue.
Mhm.
And now the state's actually holding us accountable for unexcused absences as part of our report cards.
Mhm.
So it becomes very tricky. A lot of times people just go and ask like, were they sick? Were they not sick? Are they sick?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
It can be very vague.
Yeah, but
Some parents are not vague.
yeah, but there has to be some.
More
type of-
information than I need.
Yeah, there
So
has to be
much.
some type of excuse because we have to report it.
Kristen has 5 minutes left. Is there anything else you wanted to tell us about this?
I didn't have anything else on this. I think with those changes and then making sure that anywhere in the bulleted items, it says students as opposed to like student athletes, like
I think I fixed it.
that
but
sort of
I might
thing. Yeah,
have
no, I think you did too.
We're not gonna talk about grading systems today.
Well, we might
Well,
lose some.
But
Kristen needs to leave.
Yeah,
Kristen's gonna leave, so.
we can always come back to that.
That one, it sounds like that one's gonna take a while anyway.
Well, we always have a real full agenda, but we never know how long it'll take. So it's not,
But
It's
this
a
is the-
rolling
But this is
agenda.
the most work we've gotten on this.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're
this
making
is progress.
Yeah.
but they're
Awesome.
important topics. There's no need for us to rush through them if we're
Yeah,
not ready, we're not ready.
I know that you had on the agenda, you wanted to talk about 5281. Did you want to jump to that one maybe?
Yeah,
while
if you-
we're here?
if you-
It's
5281 eligibility.
academic eligibility, because it kind of came with this a bit.
Yeah, if you want to say, how many minutes do you have? I don't want to keep you.
It's,
Yeah, 4 minutes.
it's
If you've had any thoughts about intent of this.
We have never talked about this, right? Like, we've had,
We started, oh, unless those are just my notes.
So Joe and I both spent some time with this.
I'm getting to it, sorry.
And yeah, I guess once,
Yeah, keep talking.
so, just looking at it where it says to remain eligible for participation in interscholastic athletics / extracurricular activities. That's our big thing, continuing to add that on. Reevaluated to academic performance will be evaluated every 3 weeks. That's our gradebook update currently, and through quarterly student report cards. Again, it's very restorative for students, that sort of thing, go to homework center, stay after school, this and that. We talked a bunch today about how this would be evaluated. And the high school IST team meets weekly. So this is something, we actually went through and got the data. So for the fall sports, it would have been 9 kids that we had to watch over. That's something, and they were the same kids, about 7 of them that we already spoke about at IST anyways. So it was kind of a natural fit. Our IST team, by the way, is myself, Joe, Karen Jones, our school counselor, school psychologist, the school nurse. So it's a team.
IST.
Individual student centered team, or MTSS,
Yes.
is what we do. So
Yep.
it's all about that special interventions that you give the students.
Okay.
at risk.
Yep. So they ended up being many of the same similar students that we were monitoring anyway. So it's kind of fell, we would hear from the counselors, the counselor, we would speak about it. And it's very easy at the end of the IST to kind of send a message out to coach and say, hey, your student athlete so-and-so will need to stay for homework center on these days for these amount of weeks until they get their grades 65 or better. So that way, we're not really breaking confidentiality. We're just saying they're staying for this. And that way the coach is then responsible for saying, hey, shouldn't be at practice. You have to go get your support. So correct me if I'm wrong with any of that.
Yeah, we're really just
Okay, good.
formalizing what we do, using the structures that we already have in place to make it work.
Yeah.
And be a little more consistent with it. We did look in fall was our biggest participation season. And there would have been, I went back and looked at the lists that the social worker provided with us with family and attendance through the course of the fall season, which would have been the biggest. There would have been 9 students that, had participated in this through the fall sports season.
Does this work?
It's very manageable.
It does. We actually found that with the kids that we were doing this already through IST and getting them to the homework center, their attendance was better. So we do find a lot of success in it. So,
And are they then participating in academics?
Yeah.
Or athletics or?
yeah. So
Football
actually, I'm thinking of one kid in particular was showing up early, was even doing extra stuff because they had the support at the end of the day, so they could just go right to practice and do that stuff. They were actually showing up earlier in the day to work out and condition, and generally their attendance was better. So it kind of worked in a multitude of ways. So I didn't have a lot of edits on that. I just knew that you wanted to speak about that.
Yeah, that's good. Did you draft the language or do you have it?
It's in here.
It's in here. It was some of the highlighted stuff.
There was a question that they wanted to talk about that has come up, and I don't know if you guys have an answer to it yet, is what on step 2, when someone is suspended for participation, that, they could be you want to explain it? Like where they don't go to the games, but they go to practices because it might be in the best interest of their child to be able to stay in practices. I didn't know, that one seems a little lopsided because it's not easy to equally disperse that out. But you talked about that's what you guys have done in the past.
Yeah, we spoke, because this is the academic part of this, right? And if, being a part of something, whether it be the Saga Club, or if you are in the musical production, or if it's an athletic thing, that might be your connection to school. So if they're putting in the good faith effort, that's what we used to call it at Schoharie, GFE, good faith effort, and, doing homework center, and they're meeting with and they're doing all the right things. I was a student that struggled in math. Math was not my thing. So my coach, Gary Bynan, would say I had to go for help. I was still allowed to practice and play because he knew and would hear and get a good report that I was still putting in that effort to better myself. So that's where I'm coming from. I think Joe would agree with that.
So you would still have the kids practice, or would you have them be required to show up at practice but not practice?
Still practice.
Still practice.
And what about events? What about Saga and other clubs like that? Because we just have to write it. It would have to be articulated.
I think that if they are being held to working with the teacher, working with their counselors, getting tutoring support, however you want to call it, that extra support, that's putting in the work so that they can continue to do this.
Then step 2 would need to be changed.
Yeah, I don't know how you word that.
And what if practice conflicts with this 2:35 to 3:20?
Yeah, it might. Most practices are supposed to start later than that,
Oh,
and most
There's,
coaches are very flexible
There's
with that.
times when there's small window.
And you
I
just
don't
weren't
know
with
what
the
that's gonna say.
student.
And you
This
just,
is
it is, for
because
some of the students. that's
Right.
you're suspended from,
punishment, and this one,
Yeah.
you're gonna suspend from games, but
or they don't like that.
and it's for the extracurricular things.
And the
You're not
coaches.
suspending them. I
Right.
don't know how to
Depends on
write
the
that.
coaches, if they-
Right now, I don't either.
Yeah, I'm confused by that.
Coaches all
Sorry.
understand that.
It helps as well.
First, and we should word it up.
So it's okay if the child misses the first 25 minutes of practice because they,
And we would make sure that the coach, and I'm sure that Joe would help make sure that the coach knows that can't be used against the student. They're bettering themselves because they're student athletes. First and
It's an
foremost.
incentive.
Absolutely
I
is.
like that.
So step 2 needs to be completely reworded though, and I have no idea
but
how
at
to
least
do
we
it.
know the intent
Yeah.
now. We
Yeah.
don't have to keep Kristen for worrying.
I have
Oh,
one
we
more,
can try it.
I
We
do
can
have one
look
more
at it.
question though for them, because this
Sure.
is one that I just realized, and I'm sorry to put Jenna's spot like this. It says 65 in one or more courses, below a 65. I've seen it in other school districts where it's failing 2 or more,
Mhm.
and then this enacts, or it's 1 or more. Like, I just want to be clear, like, we're so good with it being 1. And then what type of course does it have to be? Is it a core course, or is it a non-core course? I mean, again,
I
like,
raised that last time.
yeah, I know you did. So these are the questions
Yep.
that come up, and if you
Yep.
don't have a policy to back you, you're in a corner, right? So
You're saying our policy currently says every single class has
I
to be
don't know,
above 65.
the way I read it currently,
Me
yes,
too.
that's the way I read it.
I mean, let's all admit there's some classes, if I had to throw out an example, algebra 2. A
Mhm.
lot of kids
Super hard.
find themselves below a 65 that are working their butts
And by
off.
the way, I've been in 3 different districts. I've seen that in every single district. Algebra 2 is hard
But I
course.
like what Kristen was saying, like, if we know they're working their butt off, I don't know.
Mhm.
I've watched students work so hard and still fail,
And that's the
like
reason
by
why,
like a 50.
Right.
and that's the reason why the policy, this is a support policy, it's not a punitive policy. We're just
Mhm.
trying to link the kids to,
So we can add discretion type language maybe?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I just want to,
Yeah.
Don't go too far in that direction.
no, I just want to be clear
There's
though.
gotta be some expectations. I believe that we are doing a fabulous job in society in lowering our expectations. And I really want us to, at least in Voorheesville, say, you know, I don't know if one course that's under 65 is enough to throw you off, but,
Yeah.
you know, let's make sure that these kids are hitting the academics before they're
Mhm.
going into
You could do
extracurriculars.
it quarterly, like, because let's be honest, if you're doing it your 3-week mark, I've seen my children 3-week mark, sometimes it's not that pretty.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the quarter, we're passing, right? So to me, it's that quarterly mark is that big one, right? Because those midterm, those in the
And
middle
that may be
ones,
enough to,
those, sometimes they're typically lower for some kids. So mine.
Or just depending on what you were
But they
teaching in
can
that unit, if you don't have enough grades put
Listen,
in.
I have seen
Yeah.
grades at 50s and 45s and maybe even a 10 before that got up to 65, 70s, or 80s by the time the quarter was done, just
But-
based on the time that the 3 were came out.
They don't have to wait till the following quarter to get off.
No, because then you have your 3 weeks every 3 weeks.
Mhm.
So you can, okay.
But I'm just saying that quarterly one does hold a different expectation.
well, then
than
this
the 3
gets into
weeks.
like, I don't know how, what's a quarter? How many weeks is a quarter?
10 weeks.
So you're talking about multiple,
Mhm.
and we're now into what, the 3rd evaluation, 4th evaluation, and they're still below 65
Mhm.
if you go on that quarterly thing.
Yeah.
At some point, there's gotta be like, oh, you're gonna need to do this before you can go to practice.
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with
Well,
that.
that's where step 2 can then be.
Yeah.
You can
More
articulate that in step 2. I'll work with Joe and Kristen to reword step 2 to be able to have some accountability in there and flexibility at the same time.
I think it's good for the kid if we say, look, you're gonna have to get your grade up here if you wanna participate.
Mhm.
Right now, we have it down for this trimester, for the every 3 weeks. I think adding some quarterly expectation in there about that
And I can live with
and
that.
moving in there, so you still have the ability to grow, but you still have a benchmark.
And an opportunity to get them
Right.
extra services
Right?
Yeah.
'Cause
before it gets to the.
Because let's be honest, what really matters is what that says for quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, because that gets added up for your final average.
Mhm.
Right? And if you don't have, those in at least the rounds of passing, you're not gonna pass for the final quarter.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we gotta get you there anyway, so.
So we'll change it for the quarter.
Okay.
We'll work on
You
We'll
okay with
start
that,
by this
Kristen?
one. Yeah, no,
You okay with quarterly?
yes, I think that's great. And I grew up in a school where it was 1 or more, and then I worked at a school that it was 2 or more. So I have 2 different
Which one do
perspectives.
you like better?
What's one or more,
So
Classes.
I went to Burn Hills,
Yeah.
and it was if you were failing 1 or more, it was math.
courses, what you're talking about.
Courses,
Okay.
right? You had to have a supervised study hall, a sports study hall is what they called it at the time. But this would be extracurricular study hall or something like that, right? There, as an athlete, I really appreciated it because I had to do that. I only focused on that, and it made me work really hard in all of my classes.
Mhm.
I have seen some slippage, if you will, when I was at Schoharie, when it was 2 or more, because that becomes, okay, you've got 2 or more. And then are we like creating kids that have to now go to summer school, but they were allowed to do all of their extracurriculars? So do you know what I mean? So I'm more in favor of 1 or more. I think that that's our expectation. I don't think we should less than that.
I think it
Would be my
allows the child to
perspective.
focus more too. I mean, if it's 2 or more, all of a sudden, oh, now I'm really in a hole.
Yeah,
And if I can catch you when it's 1, maybe we can get you out of that hole
Well,
easier.
and I suppose if you look holistically, a student needs 5 credits worth to go from each grade level. So if it's 5 credits worth, then it's 5 courses and 2 of them are failing. So that means you're only.
Yep.
So that would
So
be
if
my,
If we change it to quarterly, does that mesh with your plan to use the IST meetings?
Well, we're gonna keep the
We're gonna
3-week
keep that.
too.
yes.
But the
Yep.
quarterly will
Yep.
be able to help, like, give you a little bit of a benchmark.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think we'll work through it.
And IST just is a benefit because those kids, even though we say we're gonna review it every 3, and then quarterly, we talk about those kids every week. So they kind of are on our radar
How to
every
help
week.
them.
Yeah, that's just how it happens. So, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything
Yes.
else on our agenda that you needed to address?
She needs to
She
No,
needs to
I'm
go.
all set.
All right. You're like, no, I gotta leave.
Nope.
Kristen, thank you.
Yeah,
Nice
thank
job.
you very much.
We have email too.
Okay.
Feel free if you think of something.
Got it.
All right.
Holy smokes.
Okay, we made it through 1.
Kinda.
Do you want to talk about the public use of facilities thing, or
Well,
do
we
you
didn't
want
even finish the infractions.
to? Yeah.
Wasn't there something you
Do we need a
else
break?
you want Joe for? Was he on this
Yeah.
elsewhere?
Facilities, I think.
I think just briefly, Joe, you were at facilities and we've been talking about maybe updating our policy for use of school facilities. Remember at the facilities meeting, we were talking about possibly, it might be helpful to ask everyone that wants to use the facility for that season to have a certain deadline so that we're reviewing them all at once. That's kind of what we were talking about, Tim and RG at facilities, and we knew we wouldn't get to be able to talk about all of that today, but we just wanted to quickly see if you two are okay with considering that approach and make sure Joe was here in case you had any thoughts additionally, Joe,
Yeah,
after
I
you
think
thought
we-
about that a little bit.
For a couple different reasons, we had different groups, community-based groups that are, starting to request the same facilities that
Right.
groups that had exclusive use of. And, the one benefit to it is we can review a request and evaluate what we can accommodate, what we may not be able to accommodate. I think a lot of it, if there's better coordination, we can make it work, like close to 100%. But there may be some times where there's conversation about, you may not be able to have exclusive use to these 5 spots, it may have to be 4.
Right.
I think it would just help us, better be aware of how it all works and be as accommodating as we can. They are community-based groups that do support our programs. And I think the other piece that we talked about was the financial part of it.
Right. So we're
What the
really,
costs
the
are, making
facilities
sure they're,
group is struggling with, especially lining the fields, right?
yeah.
So one of the questions is that we gotta look at the finances and say, if we're going to continue to line fields for people, that costs money for the paint, costs money for our person to do it, and we have more and more demands. We're not really charging for that, right? That's not a component that's again charged. Neil brought up the fact that other school districts, they don't do any lining for any outside people. They have those people do the lining, and then there's expectations that they have to use. So if we're using white, they have to use yellow, so different colors. That's how they've done it in other places. So that will be something in policy that we need to talk about is, how do you want to do that? So facilities and policy have to kind of go hand in hand and
Right.
have some conversations about what that's going to look like, because our manpower is limited. And if we have 2 different people at the same time wanting us to line fields every week,
And we have our own.
and we have our own to do, something's going to get lost. Right.
And sometimes we know it's just not possible. Let's say it rains for a week straight, and then all of a sudden you're trying to mow and have a bunch of games. There needs to be some flexibility if the expectation is the district is doing it.
Right, and that's just not in any of our
Then the
policies.
clubs get all, it's hard. Clubs showing up expecting to have soccer fields ready to play and they're not.
Right.
Yeah, it's a monster
Yeah.
coordination effort.
It really is.
I know,
And
because
CD, why,
SL,
they
CYSL,
have very specific
Yep.
rules
yes, they do,
for their, their field.
yeah. Based on, for soccer, my mom used to on soccer club sport too, so, depending on the age group, there are certain set field
Mhm.
sizes where you have to be in a particular range, so it does get
And lacrosse was the same way, they had,
lacrosse
Different
and
age
then,
groups,
Yeah.
different, and it's different by gender.
If you,
Yeah, women, girls has different, like,
and then
shooting and
it's a lot of.
And boys.
if you had, a requirement that we will make our grounds available to you with the understanding that you do your own preparation, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
both.
It's both, it's,
yeah.
this isn't this is a dilemma, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think, dilemmas don't have a solution one way or the other, it's not a problem, problems are 2 plus 2
Right,
equals 4.
right.
This is a dilemma, I don't think you're gonna have a good solution one way or the other, it's gonna be the best fix that we can do for the time that we have.
If you allow groups to do their own striping, are they gonna mess that up? Are they gonna do a poor job?
Kiwanis does their own.
They do their own, and is it then a problem for other groups or for us that they've done a,
Well, they do that on fields we don't use for sports.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
use
okay.
the element.
It's a whole
Different- different game.
That's a whole different
Yeah.
ball of
Yeah,
wax.
So
and Kiwanis is the only one that uses those fields for games,
Soccer and baseball, right?
yeah.
Trish and I talked, we don't see an urgency now, because I think we have a game plan. But we do need to figure out,
Just in general.
in general,
direction.
timeframe, and other things that you wanna look at, and we have to and Nia brought up a good point of looking at those finances aspect of it. Is, what are our expectations and, what are we doing for?
Well, beyond-
How do we make it equal?
beyond striping, what are we talking about?
Oh,
Lighting?
access.
No, I'm talking about costs.
No,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, access was,
Mowing.
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 It's mowing, and then the other problem is going to be, and this is one, is how often are people on our field, right? Because if our goal is to have really nice turf, right, and have it done, there's gotta be a rest period.
Mm,
And if it's that rest period, if you don't have a rest period, then you have to like do extra to it, which is more money to be able to put more seed and fertilizer, so
And then,
it's a whole different ball of wax.
well, like
It's complicated.
don't some of the adult baseball leagues use
Yeah.
the satellite fields too?
Yeah,
So
I think
that
everybody
there's
uses it.
dirt and chalk.
There's a lot there.
But do either of you, do you have any opinions or things we're not thinking about as far as trying to have like a seasonal deadline?
I think that makes a lot of sense because I don't, like, the expectation has been that you get your request in, you get first.
You get first dibs.
You get first dibs, and, we have lots of groups who.
I struggle
it's-
with that.
Right.
Right.
I think we,
I mean, as a
Trying to
district, I feel like we're trying to serve everybody, right?
that's,
This is a stupid question, but I'm gonna assume you have some sacred cows that have been using these fields for a long, long time, and they are not expecting to be set aside by some startup group, this new lacrosse group coming through. Am I right?
I have no comment.
I'll comment. Yeah, well, not in terms of how Joe has handled it, but yes, there are some groups that have been longstanding users of the school facilities. I think, a gym's a gym, it's hard to split. Fields, it's easier to split or use for multiple purposes. But we now have multiple groups, all with, equal access under our policies for requesting to use the same facilities at the
And
same time.
let me get clear of what we're talking about. Gym, fields over here, fields over there,
And
And
elementary.
elementary.
and elementary,
And gyms at elementary.
and the
also.
gym at the elementary.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Sometimes the pack, but
Yeah, not really,
we haven't
yeah.
had much,
So
but we
mostly-
could, we
yeah.
just haven't had.
But it's mostly gyms
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 and
and
fields.
and our fields are always used. I mean, there's people on our field almost all the time.
Mhm.
Because there's not a lot of other local
Yeah.
options, except for the town park, right?
Right.
Yeah, and all of these things, I think it's really important. All these groups that are wanting to do this
And
support
serving our
a large amount of our students and community.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
my kids have all been through
Yeah,
almost
you-
all of these
you
groups,
want
are
that.
currently in some of these groups right now too. Like, full disclosure, my daughter plays lacrosse, right? She's in that lacrosse one right now. And
They're all great groups. yeah.
they're all great groups, they're all in these programs that are supporting our kids and
Our
growing.
public school system,
And
These are
that's what
communities.
makes it hard. So
any group.
we may have to revisit this one in April, just if we're gonna add timelines.
I would think we should try to, if we
Yeah.
can, at our April meeting, because, if we can't do it before, because we do have a contract that's gonna come up soon.
Yeah.
This can't be something where we gotta create the wheel. There's gotta be some districts that you've
True.
Yeah,
heard of that have this same problem and have a system.
the system is the timeline is the best one.
Turf
Timeline.
fields are really overwhelmed by this.
Yeah, the timeline is the best way to do it, because then you're at least giving all of them a time frame to get it in, and then we'll evaluate and then talk to you about scheduling better. That should, so far, that is the best option that we have.
But then you're gonna have to, probably everyone's gonna have to compromise a little bit.
Right,
Yeah.
but Joe's used to working with these groups.
But
getting to
I
the
think all these
place, right,
groups, but these groups all get the same point that I just made is, they're all here for our community, and I think they all recognize that they're all supporting each other and supporting the same place.
All right.
And a lot of people, families have kids on all of these.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like there's a favorite and not a favorite.
Yeah.
But there is legacy here.
Well, I think just traditional
Yeah.
sports that,
Yeah,
you know, have been around for a long time, they've been using,
you're right,
they
right.
come up with some of
So
these,
they'll have to change.
these new groups that come up and
Yeah.
who have a different striping system,
Yeah.
the field size, the dimensions.
All right, so our goal is the timeline season thing. Does that
Yeah,
sound
we
good?
can, I think that's something we can easily get done.
And we did
Just that.
the lining, who knows?
Yeah, if we only tackle one thing at a time, and just do the timeline, I think we can get
I
that
think
done.
it should be done by lottery.
The field use?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I wouldn't want to be picking out of that hat.
Y'all
I'm not
got-
picking
Y'all
that.
got equal chance here.
I'm not picking that. Okay,
It's like Hunger Games, Tim.
all right. Anything else on that one?
No, I think that's what we hope to get from today about the public use. I think that's it. Joe, is there anything we didn't cover that you want us to cover? Or concerns you have in these policies that we're talking about that we haven't asked you? Okay.
Thank you very much.
And if you think about something afterward, just reach out.
All right.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for your time. Nice job.
Phew.
All right.
That's a
47,
kid of words.
well,
All right.
4710?
Are we not gonna finish up the other ones?
Oh, yeah, what other ones do you want to go through?
We can come back to them if you want.
Or which
We want
ones?
to get through graduation. Well, I feel like we got close on our 5205 beast.
I'll go back to that. What ones do you want to revisit? on
I
that?
was still in the infractions, the unexcused absence from school. Like, does that mean one? Like, I don't love how it's listed,
So,
but I'm fine if there's a good reason to do it this way, maybe.
well, an unexcused absence, the way I look at it is if you're unexcused, you can't play for the day. That's the
That
way I
day?
read this. Yeah, it's only
That's
that day.
standard.
That's the standard practice. It's not
I think
penalties.
That's like
Yeah.
sectional
It's a
rules. It's not, I don't think.
Yeah, but if you're, it doesn't mean for the rest of this, so I think maybe that, you're reading this for like
Well,
violation
we're
one violation.
saying that
I got you,
you
yep.
get first, second, third violation, and these are the reasons you
So,
get them.
okay, so I don't read it that way, that's a good point. So, because since these, yes, I agree, but the unexcused absence,
If we already have the inherent,
why don't we take unexcused absence out and just say, if an unexcused absence, you cannot participate in the event that day? Because that is the basic practice.
so that wouldn't be,
It wouldn't go any other violations. It wouldn't be a stage 1, 2, or 3
So that
violation.
would just be general eligibility?
General eligibility, yep.
right, my understanding is this list is defining why
Yeah,
you
no,
get
that's a
1,
really
2, or
good
3
point.
violations.
Nope, that's a super good point. Why don't we take that out?
Okay,
and then put a general eligibility, because that is really standard practice across the board. So if you're
General
not
eligibility in the,
in anything, yeah, like if you're not in school,
no, I get that, but like.
you shouldn't practice.
What policy?
In this one, for co-curricular and
Up
extracurricular,
top more?
yeah, somewhere else up top.
Yeah, maybe we could put it in the general eligibility section.
There it is. That makes a lot of sense, Trish. Now that I realize how you're reading it. So,
I'm sorry for you.
I'm just gonna bold it on the second paragraph for now, and then.
All right, phasing. Like stealing, I get, but.
I think that might be an antiquated way to say something,
Yeah,
right?
this is just kind of weird.
Again, some of these are ones that have been here for
Of
years.
course, we
and
don't
years
want
and
people
years.
stealing, but what does that mean? Like,
From who?
Talia stole my pencil.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna have a policy with wording that could apply to anything, it just makes me nervous.
Well,
Of course, I don't want people stealing. Maybe I'm reading into this too much, but. I really
Again,
struggle with this section.
let's make sure they have something to hang their hat on.
How about we do theft of property? Because then all of this
That's
is
what I
at the
was thinking
discretion
of.
of,
Property
Okay,
theft.
That's
that
happened
seems a little-
yeah, and this is at the discretion of this, again, these are at the discretion of the administrator as well, right? So,
We have vandalism of, or property destroyed.
Right.
You could have vandalism theft.
if someone's taking a cell phone and then giving it back to their friend later because they're just messing with them, they're not gonna get it. But if they're taking a cell phone and selling it or using it or taking out the SIM card, that's a whole different scenario, right? And that's where I think that administrator discretion has to come into play.
And for bullying, do we have that defined in our other policy?
It's in the harassment policy,
The 0115?
0115, yeah.
Should we just say
So-
bullying is defined?
I gotta,
you want to cross-reference?
yeah, I don't think it should be bullying.
Yeah,
I think it needs to be,
I'm
because
worried,
bullying is a very difficult thing.
exactly.
Mhm.
That's my concern with how this
I'm
is written.
totally with you on that one.
So
um,
I don't know if we wanna,
How about we do an infraction, how about harassment? Just call it that.
can we just say, refer to our other section?
You know, I'm gonna make a statement here, editorial comment. If we use too much words or try to get too down into the weeds,
Yeah.
this gets lost in translation.
That's what.
That's what the bullying is, the bullying one, I totally agree with you, that's way too much.
I think we're just
too.
keep it simple, is all I'm saying, is keep it simple, so that people who have to enforce this stuff
Yeah,
have guidelines that they understand and can hang their hat on. And if we got all these, I mean, you know this as a lawyer, you put more words on there, you're setting yourself up for more reasons for people to sue you.
Harassment is an infraction within the code of conduct. So if you want to keep it in
Right,
there,
student harassment and bullying is section 0115. So if we want to list it here too, that's fine, but I would just say we keep them the same, right?
We could say violations
Right.
of,
Section,
You don't have to refer to anything, you just say harassment.
yeah, call it a day. Because we define harassment somewhere else. Like the code of conduct, sometimes it doesn't say policy 0115 is this,
You
it
do-
says.
You do
student
have cross-references listed below,
below, true.
and you could
We don't,
throw that one in there if you wanted to.
harassment. Mhm.
I think we should. I think we
Yeah,
should.
that's a good idea.
Nice, Ken.
Trish, can you give me the exact title of that one?
Yeah, it's listed on,
Yeah.
the agenda.
Oh, sorry, it is, sorry.
Student harassment and bullying.
That's
And
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, 0115.
Because there's a lot of laws that go along with that.
Exactly.
And there's, you know, a lot of due process, so
I got nervous that we were
No,
trying to
that was-
define what it was here, and
I-
it might not be the same as what we have there.
I think Joe's point of iterations of committees and what they were looking for at the time kind of fit into that. Maybe there was a bullying issue going on at the time that people wanted to address, and it came out in the policy. Good.
A lot of laws get written with a very specific incident or person in mind.
Good.
And under the appeals process.
Can we,
Do we want co-curricular? Same process. for
yeah,
use
can we go
for this?
back up now, Tricia? Because now you've made some points and make me reevaluate something. The hazing and initiation ceremony,
Yeah,
does it need to be that wordy?
I don't think so. Although, I don't know.
Can we just say hazing? Or Argy, thoughts?
I mean, hazing works. I mean,
Hazing's not-
Initiation ceremony is, I don't know that happens anymore here. I mean, I'm sure it used to, but
But for some,
not necessarily here, just in general.
in some things, there's a intentional initiation ceremony,
There-
like National Honor
Well,
Society.
that's where I think, so,
So if you say,
And I
I
don't think
think,
hazing and initiation ceremonies are exactly the same thing.
yeah,
We oftentimes use them interchangeably, but hazing can occur after you're already part of the group.
right.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it can be as stupid as like, you know, the underclassmen carry the seniors' bags to the field.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's a type of hazing. We wouldn't want that either.
Right. So, but that is the coach's responsibility also to stop that too, which, as they said,
Yeah.
will not permit nor. I just, now that you brought up listen, you don't want hazing and you want this as part of the, just from my own experiences, you want to have it in the policy. You want it.
Yeah.
I just, it might be a little too much in here. That's all I was wondering now that
So we're just gonna say harassment for the other one?
yeah, that works for me.
Well,
We could say hazing or harassment.
you can do that, but you got all this stuff, that team building
Yeah, I
activities
think-
such as
Yeah.
pasta
I think
parties.
we
and-
delete
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
okay,
I think all that stuff is
all right,
superfluous.
Yeah, I think we could combine them, hazing or harassment.
okay. And then just leave it like that, right?
Are we not thinking of anything, Talia, that you have inside knowledge of?
I mean, I'll be honest, yeah, I don't really know what exactly goes on, what, like infractions people
That's
Okay.
good. I'm glad you
experience, but
don't.
I think I like this better, yeah, hazing and harassment.
Okay, good.
Okay, so in general, for this policy, I think we've made it through, and we might not have exact language yet, but at least we have notes, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
That we can work on pulling it together, and eligibility, we obviously don't have the language yet, but I think all agree on what we're trying to do intent-wise, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we could probably finalize this one at our next.
Both of
meeting.
these?
The 5205, and which other one are you thinking?
5281 is the
Yeah.
academic
Yeah.
eligibility.
Yes.
Well, the extracurricular and athletic one, we're gonna have to then decide which policies we take away and abolish. And
Okay,
then,
right.
right, because we're gonna be abolishing a couple policies
Yes, we
off of
are.
that. And then we're gonna have to do a first read. And again, or the attorney has not gotten back to me, but I would think that we should do a public hearing on this one.
Okay,
Just because you're gonna do you have to do a public hearing in your code of conduct. I feel like this is another code of conduct
It is,
anyways, and
yeah.
it does impact a larger amount of people. I think you wanna have an opportunity for a public hearing. So you could do that, you could do first read in May and then a public hearing in June, or you could do the first read in June and the public hearing at the reorg meeting, and then your second reading and then approval.
My guess would be is few if any would show up to comment, but you there can say, we gave you the shot, we asked you, what do you think?
I think it's important.
So if we finalize language at our April meeting and decide on abolishment of ones we don't need anymore,
Yeah,
and
we
then
can-
you're saying first reading,
First grade could be June and or May for the extracurricular, it really is up to you. But I think if you're gonna have the hearing, that has to be in July, when we do the reorg meeting after school. Because that's when we do the code of conduct.
so first reading could be May or June.
Yeah.
And then hearing is July.
That's,
Then you guarantee no one's gonna show up.
that's why you always doing them.
You always want to
This is
offer
July.
it though.
But would it be better to be done during the school year?
I've seen people come, just so you know, like, I've
Even
seen
in
people.
July?
Yeah,
Sounds like a plan, everybody. Okay, good. Are you good with that?
You good?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna put 1,500 in there too, because maybe we could get the seasons in there, and that's
Yeah, that's a
along
good
with
call.
those
Good call.
at the April meeting.
Can we skip
We can
down
do
to
whatever
one
you
if
want.
you wouldn't mind, just because I know we
Want
said
to
four
jump to
thirty.
graduation?
I actually want to jump to
Since we're-
5152 real quick.
Oh, yeah, that, because that was
Right?
ready to roll.
Yeah, so Tim,
Yes. I like what you wrote.
you, really good point,
Language change?
really good point.
Yeah,
And that
We
was,
added
and I
number
think that
2.
safeguards the district.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Will
what
you
you,
pull that up?
Yeah, I'm struggling today. I'm actually using a computer. I apologize.
It's because we had a break, you know?
5152.
I'm getting to it.
He
Sorry.
added number 2 under,
Here we go.
Yeah.
5152. Because then I think that would be a.
that's, I think that captures it.
Yeah, I'll just turn it.
Yeah, I finally got
yeah, I
it.
have it here too if you want.
It took me a while. Artie, sometimes it happens to me too, where it just keeps on knocking me off. Today's been good.
And of all the things that I had done my little research
Yeah.
on, that was the one that jumped out.
Yeah.
I said, you know, we don't have that. We have a good policy here, honestly.
Yeah.
We just need to add this.
So this one was something I actually took right from one of the things that Tim found.
Mhm.
And most schools, you go through your CSE, you have your community of special education, then they're transferred. If you're transferred through community of special education, that other school then houses and takes care of the payment. So if we have a student who goes to Gilligan or goes to Cobblescale or goes into the program, they go through CSE, they go through it, we actually pay for them to go to the other school district because it's a placement for special education. If a parent wants their child to go to that school district, they should try to go through CSE. CSE may say, no, that's not a program that we would say, we can have a comparable program at the home school. Then the parent says, no, I want them to go here. Then it would be on the parent, if there was extra prices or anything to do, for them to be able to pay for, like, let's say, the extra teacher that child would need, or, because sometimes we can't accommodate all programs.
We don't really address that.
Oh, you do, actually.
Well, I think, well, maybe it's been read in here, but the CSE
Mhm.
has to say, we think this kid should be going to Voorheesville.
If it goes through CSE, if it doesn't,
Yeah,
if the attendance requires the hiring of additional staff to deliver special education, the parent shall be obligated, because we say access to section agreement, try to arrange placement, seek to arrange placement. Sometimes it doesn't work, right? Because not always are you gonna, I've seen it where.
so let's say that they go to Burn Knox Westerlo CSE,
Mhm.
and CSE says, no,
they're gonna say-
Voorheesville's not the right, we can do this here.
Yeah.
And the parent says, no, I want my kid to go to the school district where I work.
Then they would have to do a non-tuition based one, and then we would pay if there's extra accompaniments that would be a part of that.
Who's we?
They would, the parents would have to pay for extra.
Does that say that here?
Yeah. It says if the student's attendance requires the hiring of additional staff to deliver special education services and or related service, the parent shall be obligated to pay the district for such actual excess costs of the above tuition rate. Set forth. I just want to make sure.
If the Burn Knox Westerlo says yes, our CSE says yes, that child
Ours would have to agree to it
could
too.
go to Voorheesville.
Our CSE would also have to say that we could accommodate that child through
Okay.
CSE placement. So it's all part 200 regulations.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different ball of wax.
And so let's say both of them, who is going to, that child would then be eligible for state aid.
Hmm. Right,
It's
but,
Voorheesville.
so here comes the tricky part.
Where's the, who's paying for that child?
So here comes the tricky part. They technically wouldn't be a non-tuition based student because if a parent wants to transfer them to a CSE placement, they still are actually a resident of that home district, but
Right.
they're going to another placement at another school district.
Right,
Right? So, for example, Voorheesville has amazing programs for their special education programs. I mean, they're phenomenal. So we could meet our needs of those kids. If family said, I want my child to go to Voorheesville, we look, the placement meets the needs of that child. We would place that child in Voorheesville School District. They would go there every day. We would pay for transportation, go there. We would pay the bill for that child to go to Voorheesville.
we would pay.
We would pay. But they're not a non-tuition. The parent, if they want to take their child.
Non-resident or?
Right, non-resident.
Non-resident.
Sorry, I was speaking. If the parent says, I don't want anything to do with this, I want my child to go there, and it's not gonna go through any program, then the parent has to pay. Then they're a non-resident tuition.
Just let me,
Am I making sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
well, let me understand it.
But
Burn
then
Knox
this policy
Westville,
wouldn't apply.
Only if CSE doesn't work, then the student attendance requires the hiring of additional staff to deliver special education services.
Right,
Yeah.
but if the CSE determined that Voorheesville was the best
Right.
place for the student, right?
Because then we need to say if
Then
CSE,
they wouldn't be
right,
coming here as, let's say, a child of a current employee. Right?
right. So how about if CSE does not designate? 'Cause 9 times out of 10, CSE is not going to designate this to be it. Most schools will always say, no, the
Right.
placement we have is the placement where your child is. That's how it works. I've seen it 100 times.
but let's say the 99th happens and
We pay.
we pay. See,
Oh,
their
no.
CSE, let me get that straight. Their CSE
Yeah.
says Voorheesville works.
They pay.
Our CSE says we'll do it.
Yep, they pay.
They pay.
Yep,
They mean the other district,
yep, they
Burn
pay.
Knox Westville pays.
not the
Correct.
parent.
Even, and
Not
that,
the
and
parent.
it happens to be that parent is a teacher in our district.
Yeah.
Who lives in Burn Knox
Yeah.
Westerlo, who wants their kid to come here.
Yeah.
And goes through this process because the kid has special needs.
Yep.
Burn Knox Westerlo is gonna pay.
Yes,
And then we
And I'm good with
don't
that.
charge a
And
non-resident.
it wouldn't, this policy wouldn't come into
Yeah.
play because the teacher would not
it's
be.
only if
requested
CSE does not designate.
admission As a non-resident student.
I just wanna make sure we got it covered.
Yeah,
that
no, I think
if a
it's
student,
good point.
if a teacher who wants their student to come here, has special needs, we gotta make sure we can accommodate that if necessary, but somebody's gotta pay for that. And those costs can get extraordinary.
Archie, can you help me with this? If CSE does not determine,
That, is it that an alternate placement is,
hold on, thank you, I couldn't figure out. Placement
I think that's the language, right?
is needed. Yep,
Or run by
and-
Karen Jones to make sure.
yeah, parent,
I don't know if you have to say all this,
well,
because
I
you're
think
just,
we wanted to be.
what you're saying is, you gotta get this past your CSE back home. That's number one, because we're not gonna take this kid unless that CSE places this
That's
kid.
not, but that's not true, right? That's an alternate procedure, right? Because I think the language that you added in the section 2 would be, they didn't bother going through
let's say the parent
CSE to request Voorheesville as an
Let's say the
alternate
parent-
placement.
lives an hour away, right? But they're an amazing teacher and they work here and they have a child who has special needs. And they want to be with their child and they want to have that ability to have their child with them and see them all. Like I could see that, right?
Right.
They want to have their child come with them to work.
Right.
Be at school and then be able to take them home instead of having that hour commute where they're missing the ability to do that, right?
Or they have a
They-
gap in childcare. that they
With gap in
can't care.
childcare that would, and they want to still work in Voorheesville, they want their child to come here as a
I
non-resident.
get it.
Then we would, and they don't go through a CSE, we still want to have that safety net of having them pay for anything extra.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's why I think we do need to say a little bit more on this.
Okay, I thought you had it.
Yeah, no, your comments actually made a little bit more,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the section 2 language that was inserted is if the child is a child with a disability, right? And that's
Wasn't
a
that,
fact.
when, as soon as you say that.
Yeah.
You
No.
say, IDEA
Yeah, look at right here.
Article 89. I don't know if that N belongs in there.
No, I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't.
If you look at what I just wrote, if CSE does not determine an alternate placement is needed, and student attendance requires the hiring of additional staff to deliver special education and research, the parent shall be obligated to pay the district for such actual excess costs.
Okay.
That does that.
That
Yeah.
clarifies it.
Absolutely. That meets exactly all the topics you brought up.
Covers all of our bases.
It is, that was really,
And
because they're, sometimes like a district will not, an hour away, they're not gonna say typically that placement is appropriate. Because
probably not.
an hour drive is not really,
Yeah.
only if it really does meet that child's needs. They can't meet them there, and it's least restrictive environment is what you have to base all your
Correct.
placements on. So. Okay,
Okay, so this is ready for our May full board meeting for a vote.
yeah, I wanna talk to Karen, just I wanna make sure Karen gives me her blessing on this, and also,
Assuming Karen is okay with it.
yeah, and Tara Moffett. Tara Moffett is our attorney for special education, but I don't see any reason why this would be bad, but I still
So I'll
want
be
Tara.
in touch with you.
Yep.
then, okay.
Yeah, I still want Tara to review this.
Blankets.
We've been changing this in everything else. Instead of just saying parent, we say parents or guardian.
Thank you. Where is that? Archie? I'm sorry.
In that, well, number 2.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there is. Okay,
All right.
nice.
Oh, and
Making
it's another
progress.
two, It's twice in that paragraph.
Dang, is it really?
And
I got it.
Guardians is spelled incorrectly.
You know that I'm nervous.
I don't know how to spell guardian, so
Sorry.
I screw it up every
I know.
single time.
That's when I'm happy for word check.
I got, oh, see, I got it wrong at that too. The other day, I was writing an email and Jim walked by and I go, hi, Jim. And then I'm typing and then I look back to reread it and I wrote, hi, Jim, in the middle of the email. I was like, what am I doing? Okay, good.
Okay, I think that works now.
All right.
I think grading systems, you're saying this one's gonna take a while.
It's gonna take a while, so just quickly, Frank has been doing some work. You guys can look at the draft.
Yeah.
Maybe outside of this meeting, and he tried to combine initially the NISBA and the Voorheesville.
Yeah.
And then he started looking at Gilderlands.
Yeah.
And that started to get him thinking.
We hadn't done
different
anything on that
ways.
since 2003.
And he wanted to then maybe go back and work with his team
Yeah.
and then bring it back up to us. But we thought we would have that initial discussion here just to make sure the committee is okay with that approach
Yeah,
before he did any work on that.
so I moved ours with NISBA's. Which one number is that? Just real
Number
quick.
200.
4710, thank you.
Oh, 4710.
Just so I can just mention it really quick, I gotta look at it. So, oh, crap. I just messed that up. Oh, yeah, I did right. So the draft policy, I added ours to NISBA's
Mhm.
and you can see it on the bottom of it. So I didn't really change much. I just added some specifics for processing grades and stuff. Gilderland has, I put Gildan's on there, they have it as well. They also have a regulation. We don't have a regulation. The regulation basically spells out how grades are made, what the expectation of grading is. We do not have that, and that's the can of worms that I want to go back to my teams and talk about, because that's gonna take a lot of work and conversation to articulate that clearly.
So
But-
your thinking is that we want that?
I
Or
want
your
to talk to the
thinking is
board.
to talk to
That's,
admin to see if there's
if,
value to that.
if there's value to it,
Okay.
yeah,
4770R.
yeah.
47.
4710. R, yeah, we don't have one. We only have a 4710, and that regulation really does articulate how grades are developed, what the expectation is, how the weighting of it, it's a little bit different than what we currently do.
Yeah, I have all kinds of questions about those policies, so
Right,
next meeting, I think.
well, I think it's bigger than that, because one teacher might have a grading policy that's one way, another teacher might have a grading policy that's another way. And where's your consistency in what those policies are?
Also, just in terms of, and this may be in there, and I haven't looked at it closely enough, like, in terms of determining, like, grade point averages and weighted average, like, do we
There's some
do
of that,
any of
but-
that? Like,
I'd have to
It's-
confirm what's in there in our
it's
policies,
very-
because I want to make an
Our
assumption.
policy doesn't
I don't-
currently speak to
I don't
rating.
think any of it's in there,
No,
but
I
like,
don't think it
and
does.
then when you tie that into the policy on like the valedictory class.
Yeah.
I think that's why a
kinda-
regulation, kind of as was telling Trish, I think a regulation is important because it articulates what the procedures currently are, so then we can have reflection on it. It's just not something I haven't seen it yet. So I agree with you, like, there's not a clarity of what we have here. But I want to talk to my team first, because if I'm noticing it, they must have seen something over the years that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
If you look at, here it is, the 4710R, I posted it up.
Gilder.
But if you look at it, this is just going, just to show you really quick. They have the general guidelines for elementary with progress reports, parent conferences, and then they have the general guidelines for written grading policy within 10 days, and then you have 10 grades per quarter. I mean, there's some expectations, what your graded system is, what your minimum grades are.
And is this typical to put at a policy level for?
Yeah, it's a regulation, so it's more procedural.
So
But,
this regulation is already out there regardless of our policy?
well, see, this is the thing.
Yeah, that seems,
These are agreements that teachers have and school districts have, and then they go through them, but they're not articulated or indoor board approved, right? So I think having these conversations and solidifying for the district will clear up some questions that parents may have over the years and allow for a better structure of grading. If we're talking about grading for equity and making sure that it's equitable across the board and looking at our practices, and you've mentioned some of that as well, having an articulated procedure
mhm.
is our first step. And that's kind of, as I was looking into this, I was like, uncovering a rock and finding another rock and finding another rock. It's just something that I think we need to start working towards.
Yeah, I think we heard it a little bit when Kristen was in here and we talked about, we have these weekly meetings. We might not have a policy on any of this stuff, but there's procedures that are happening.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I
Hourly.
was trying to ask if we needed a policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys find value to it.
Well, I think the regulation might, because this one says high school semester classes, 2 marking periods per grade or average for semester length courses. Like, it says exactly what they do. I haven't seen that yet for us, and I want to look for that and see if we have something articulated already, and then add it possibly as a regulation if you think we need.
I'm being simplistic here, but I was always of the impression that you keep your policies kind of short.
Yeah.
And at a policy level. And you really if you need to get verbose and you got to get detailed, have your regulation.
Yeah.
To get into the operational detail.
Agreed.
And
We just don't have any regulations on this.
we don't.
Yeah.
And I think it would be helpful if we just had a little policy that was kind of brief and regulations that spelled out in detail.
Totally agree.
We do currently have.
A very brief policy.
policy.
A little too brief.
It might be a little too brief. That can happen too.
So, all right, I'll work on this and bring it back.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not gonna be the most popular person when this comes up, just so you know, is that when these conversations come up about minimum grades or maximizing grades or expectations of grades, and you start articulating it, some people want a certain way, some people want another way, and that it doesn't always end up being a great conversation. I want you to know that as we go into this, is that it can become pretty combative when you have some of these
Yeah,
conversations.
I think it's really hard in subjects where there may not be a right answer,
Yeah.
right? Like, and we want to make sure there's no.
Yeah, and that's why-
discrimination in-
And this will be one that, but this
That's
is,
tough to-
yeah.
Subjectivity
So
is
this
gonna
is-
be part of the game.
So my
Yeah.
approach to this is gonna be working with admin, working with guidance counselors, working with the building leadership teams, which is teachers and students, you're on that. And then also working with the district advisory committee too. So this is gonna be a more community shared decision-making approach to make sure that this is clear. I think that's probably the best way to do that. I'm gonna articulate what our current practices are and then evaluate them with those groups. And then bring it back to the board as a policy.
How long-term?
It's gonna be like 6 months probably.
So is there anything you need a short fix?
I think we
before?
need to look at just 4710 by itself and not worry about the regulation. I wanted to bring up my steps
Okay.
for the regulation and we'll have to go back to 4710 and really focus on it.
So at our next
Actually, I have a question.
committee meeting is in a
Well-
couple more weeks in May.
Hold on. I'm brainstorming, 4710 it does have regulation, and it's basically how you calculate Regents exams. That's more of a procedural question that goes along with the regulation. That's really not the policy. The policy is your guide. So I'm wondering eventually if that goes into what the regulation is, and it gets taken out of that guideline altogether.
I'm assuming if you're gonna have a detailed regulation, then we
Yeah,
do 4710.
I'm gonna make that a mark that
What's the purpose of our grading system? You know, that's really
Yeah.
what I see the policy is, you know,
Hmm.
and the purpose and function of a grading system and the actual detail of it is in the regulation.
So everything in 4710, except for the grading will be used as, except for the Regents part, is from NISBA,
Except
where we add the Regents part. Everything else is NISBA's, basically,
that language, but we also don't have all of NISBA's language.
right? Except for then all the other stuff I added is.
So NISBA had, was it NISBA that had language on changing grades?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah. so we're gonna have to look at that. And
So
we-
our current policy is out, doesn't talk about changing grades.
Yeah.
Tim and Archie and Talia.
So,
Frank was looking at NISBA's language and thinking it would be good for our policy to have some language about changing grades.
yeah,
I think, yeah, I mean, the procedure might belong in the regulation, but some statement in the policy makes sense.
so in April, can we just look at, can we
It's
just?
actually, this is our April, it's, the next meeting I think is the first week in May.
Okay,
Right.
that meeting, whatever,
May meeting,
yeah. Could we just look at the grading system policy only specifically for
Changing grades.
changing grades?
Okay.
And then know that I'll be taking a deep dive into the regulations then?
Yeah,
Cool.
isn't that where we started?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
yeah, I just want, but, you know, as I started doing a holistic approach to it, I realized that I think there's some growth here that we can make.
Yes, so we could make changes to the policy knowing that we're gonna make a lot more changes down the road.
Yeah, to the
If
regulation.
everybody's
This-
okay with that.
I'm looking at the one says 4710 NISBA's sample policy.
Yep.
Grading systems. Is that complete?
That's what NISBA's is, yes.
Yeah. I like that one.
Yeah, basically ours is exactly the same except for all of the processing and changing student grades. That's all new
In NISBA. we
in
don't
NISBA's.
have- Mhm. But we added a very specific district thing
Yeah,
back in 2018
So-
about how to calculate scores with Regents exams.
I will look at the grading ones, fill in like the blanks to the grading one, and then bring it back for May.
So you'll bring us a draft?
Yeah, I'll bring you a draft, a better draft.
Better one that maybe we can at least get in place
Yeah.
more quickly.
Yeah, let me do that,
That's good.
because all I did was cut and paste, so I'll take it.
Again, keeping it at that policy level.
Yep.
This one I'm looking at from NISBA looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It doesn't get into the weeds.
I don't mind that. So, okay.
All right, real quick, if we want to try to hit graduation,
Okay.
we have that one required policy that we currently don't own.
I need to just step up for a second, but
Go
go
ahead,
ahead and
okay.
continue on.
So
Number is 47.
graduation, there's 4770, which are graduation requirements. Frank and I did a quick look at that. Voorheesville is very outdated. NISBA's sample is very simple
Anyway.
and probably better than getting down in the weeds into,
It is real simple.
like
Mhm.
Tim, our existing policy, we tried to map out like the detailed classes.
Yeah,
This is our sample.
Yeah. That's,
And it's gonna inherently get outdated every time there's a
That's
little
right,
tweak.
yeah. And Tim Kelly even said like this is the most outdated policy that we have.
So he doesn't want us to try to keep
No.
updating. Was he okay with the general?
I have not shared that one yet, but I'll share that, but I don't see why people wouldn't be okay with that.
So for 4770,
the one that,
I'm thinking if we start with NISBA and if you can make sure.
Yeah, I'll
your
confirm
team's
it.
Okay with that?
Yeah. I'll confirm 4770, but it really,
I can't imagine, but I don't know what they deal with and I don't want to make assumptions that aren't
well,
fair.
again, as Tim said, these are
Right.
50-foot views and this one is a 50-foot view.
It's about 100 foot from what I can tell on this one. It's almost lacking in any sort of, doesn't say much at all.
No.
Okay, so that's what we'll do for 4770. 4771, maybe we'll wait until RG comes back.
So here's a question
She kind of made a comment about that.
Yeah. for 4770.
Mm-hmm.
It says the board will determine the graduation requirements.
Oh. Okay, so we do need some.
So we do need some requirements put in there then.
So maybe if you could, I don't want to add too much to your plate, but when you talk to guidance about this, maybe see what they would like to
Yeah.
have in the policy.
I think that's exactly, I think you're right on.
Articulate
Yeah, what are the requirements?
the requirements.
We're just simply saying the board's gonna determine that, and that's fine to have that.
And if it is-
Currently, the requirements are.
Right. And
If
yeah,
it is this and it has to be updated, that's fine.
that's it. Yeah, and we just fix that because we require CFM,
Mhm.
and then we also require the volunteer hours, which I think is
Sure, sure.
fantastic. Not all schools require volunteer hours. So, I think those are important things that we want to keep, in the program.
Do we have that even volunteer hours, even in our existing policy?
I have no
I don't
idea.
see it listed.
So that's what Tim said. This one's very, very old.
Okay, so maybe if you could,
Yep, I'll do that.
don't mind putting it on your list,
That would
update
be
that and
perfect.
have a draft.
Yeah,
We can
I
look
think
at
I
it.
can make a simple,
Yeah.
clear draft. I don't think that one's gonna be too hard to take care of.
And I
Things like
think our
this.
current practice for volunteer hours is to require them in your senior year. I don't
Yeah.
know if there was a particular reason, but the guidance would have their opinion on that.
Yeah, and I think there's been years and years of practice on this. It's just not been documented. So,
Talia, you okay with all that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to put you on the spot, but please, if you ever have a comment, interrupt us. 4771, let's come back to in a second.
I think we have a long road on that.
Because I don't want RG. Okay, 4772 is graduation ceremonies. We do not currently have a policy, and it's required.
Yeah,
NISBA has a recommended 4772 and a 4772R. Frank, did you have thoughts on that? Is that where you'd like to start?
I am up for discussion on these.
Okay. RG's back.
I am fine with, I haven't shared this with any of the
4771
staff
because
yet.
You had a comment. So we went to 4772.
I haven't shared 4772 with anyone yet. So I
Okay.
haven't shared it with like the guidance counselors or because any of these just to see if this matches our practice or not. So
So
if you
NISBA
want, I can bring that to
Okay.
them. Because we do we have different types of speeches and we have a lot of history.
are we involved in this? Do we have students who are getting a CDOS
Yes, absolutely.
or a SAC?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, that's happening.
4772.
Yeah,
Graduation ceremonies. NISBA has, we don't currently have a policy in Voorheesville.
Yeah.
NISBA has a place to start perhaps, and also a regulation that goes with it.
under that one, they have one indication of optional language. See that?
there's a lot. Which one?
If a student who participates in the graduation ceremony by earning a CDOS or SAC only.
Mhm.
Now, what does that mean, only?
So these are special education requirements. So
Right.
like, let's say a student gets one of those diplomas,
Right.
it shouldn't stop them from being part of the ceremony itself.
Can they get more than a CDOS or a SAC?
No, typically that's.
So that, the word only, when I first read it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was meant this way. It almost sounded like it was.
Yeah.
It was suggesting
you
that
can
this is less than.
You can get a
diploma.
CDOS and a regular diploma. You can get a little
Okay,
extra.
so that
Yeah, there's
only
little
what
things,
was
credentials that you can get on. that.
identifying
Yeah.
exclusivity, not
Right,
value judgment.
Right.
Okay, all right, got it.
Should we say it the way we say it in the next paragraph? By earning
yeah.
only a CDOS?
So here's the other thing. Let's say somebody earns a CDOS at 18 and then at 20, because special education, they're allowed to stay up until 21. At 20, then gets a diploma. They can walk the stage twice,
Hmm.
right? That's what this is saying. which
I'm okay with that.
I'm totally fine with it.
Walk the stage.
Yeah, walk this, if
Let's
you,
celebrate.
if
That's
you've done
right.
it, you get it, you
I'm good
know,
with
that's the
that.
way I look at it. My thought process of graduation is that this is your culminating event that you've waited 12 years to do.
Absolutely.
So,
Right there with you.
so we want to keep the optional language in?
For that
Good.
part of it?
Yeah,
I'm fine, yeah,
Good.
yep. There's also optional language up above, but you wanted to talk to the team, right? Speakers may be selected from among the graduating class.
yeah, because they do some weird stuff here with the way they choose speakers, and they have like a history of like what speakers, the student speakers, yeah, they have a whole bunch of
Yes.
different things here. I think that, which is,
People can apply, I think, to speak,
yeah,
and I don't know the process to determine who.
I don't either, so.
I think there's also, I've heard that there's edits to speeches,
So that does happen.
which
yeah.
I don't think is a problem necessarily, depending on what.
As I was a building principal, I did edits as well sometimes. You know, there are sometimes a reason to make an edit. But you have to be careful on who's
That's
making the
what
edit
I'm
and
gonna
what
say.
free speech are you limiting or not limiting?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that
And
comes
or
down,
Are you trying to have your thoughts instead of the student?
yeah, and I don't
Depending on
know,
what the
I don't know
topic
who
is.
edits. I know as when I edited speeches, we edited for harassment or anything like that. But if there was freedom of speech law that, you know, was able to be done, we allowed it to happen because you can't limit freedom of speech.
I'm gonna miss y'all except Mr. McCree.
Oh, I had a kid say that before. And then they gave me a hug afterwards. But yeah, I think we can look into that a little bit more, 'cause I just don't know any of the process.
So you want to take this, another one you put on your list, we take to the team and come back
Yeah,
to us?
again, this will be,
Well, I don't.
we haven't had one in a while. There's no reason to rush at this point,
Okay.
you know.
You're not feeling that we need it before?
I don't think so. I mean, it's required,
Plus, the
but
process might have started, I don't know. how
it has. Oh, I wouldn't say you
It
change
has,
anything for this year.
No, that wouldn't.
No, and we haven't had one for how many years, right? I don't know how
Okay.
long it's been, so. What's a few
Had
No,
more
we're
one.
not
months?
excluding.
One of this policy,
any
even though it's
groups.
A
required.
commencement speaker.
No,
No.
required policy,
Oh.
that's all.
Okay, so you don't feel there's any.
No,
rush.
I don't think there's a rush in this. But I always say this, I will always follow the law because there's law that goes along with
Yeah.
this. So I just will make sure like, you know, any commencement issues that come up, follow the law and regulations that are already there, because that's really what just, a lot of just iterates it again. So,
Okay, and I
Consider
agree, it's better not
reiterates.
to do before graduation.
yeah,
4773, I didn't have on the list, you guys, but it was referred to in one of these, and so I just pulled it up and I got NISBA's. And Frank, our policy is exactly NISBA's, except NISBA has one little extra statement at the very end for graduation ceremonies. And if we don't have it in ours, it says students with disabilities may participate in graduation ceremonies as permitted under state law and described in policy 4772, which we don't have yet. But it's probably important to add that section for students with disabilities.
Okay.
But maybe we can't fully do it until we describe graduation ceremonies.
that's gonna be the question,
So-
right?
That, again, I guess we can just put in our notes that when we do 4772, we can add that to
Yeah,
4773.
but even then, there's law that
True.
guides us, so like,
That's true.
yeah, you know, so that's,
That's a
That's
given,
true.
right?
yeah, so there's a law that goes along with it.
Okay,
I had a student one year, special education student, had the ability to choose to walk or not walk on the stage,
yeah.
and they chose not to walk at the CSE meeting. I walked downstairs to see all the graduates, and there's a student. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm here to graduate." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I ran upstairs, had a couple curse words for a few people who didn't tell me, and then we found a chair. We changed his program. We created a draft diploma for him. We got him a picture because we did a slideshow, and we got this child to graduate. It took in an hour because we were no idea, but that's what you do, right? That's the law.
Yeah.
So you follow the law and regulations.
And 4771, aren't you had made a comment about before, I didn't know.
That's the valedictory thing.
Oh,
Well, it's complicated. 'cause-
early graduation.
Oh, yeah.
Well, NISBA's 4771 is early graduation, however, we don't have that either.
Yeah,
But we do have a 4771 that's nothing to do with early graduation. So ours is
Current is,
valedictory class.
oh, yes, yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm fine with NISBA's 4771. Our valedictory class, I find very
Valedictory
confusing
class.
and appears to be somewhat subjective, which is not how I understood how valedictorians and salutatorians get selected. Based on, not that I was one, but based on my own experience, this to me is different than how I thought it worked.
Because of the remaining good standing part.
No,
The grade point is not subjective, right?
no, but this is the class, right?
Oh, do you mean naming the valedictorian and salutatorian?
Yeah.
But there, on top of that, there's a valedictory class. That's the top 10%. And they
Oh,
get
right,
special
right.
little,
But the,
Things to
okay,
wear.
so the
It's the first time I've
valedictorian
ever
and
heard that.
salutatorian will be determined by the overall GPA, right? Provided that they meet these other criteria. Okay, I can look at that.
the class valedictorian and salutatorian is identified after the third quarter of
So,
the senior year.
I'm gonna throw a wrench into that, so involvement in 2 or more district-sponsored clubs, extracurricular activities, and or sports teams. So what if I have a student who focused all of their time and efforts on learning and didn't do a club or an extracurricular activity or sports team, and they had a 99.9 average? The next kid had a 99.6, right? So that kid with a 99.9 average, we're not gonna call the valedictorian because they didn't have a club? I'm throwing it out there. That's the way I read this. I have confusion on this. I said this to Tricia. This is a different thing than I've seen before.
Yeah, I thought it was just based on GPA, but how we calculate GPA, I'm
Yeah.
unclear on.
Are we committed for the long term, to a valedictorian and a salutatorian? Because a lot of schools are backing away.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not saying we
Oh,
should.
listen,
I'm just asking the
if
question.
you see my face, all of this is a can of worms, right? Because I was in a district and they did your top 20 and 25 and top 30 kids
Class
and did that,
rank,
and I got rid of it. I got rid of class rank. And holy smokes, I was the most hated human being for a year.
Right.
And then my compromise was top 10. And then I got rid of top 10 and just did top 3. And I still was the most hated person in the world. But that was my end. It was top 3. And I was told if I touched that, I wasn't allowed back in that area. So I'm not kidding you. That's what I was told. So
What's the problem with having a class rank?
some people like it, some people don't. And it all depends on your ability, right? Because like, let's say you're a special education student and your best ability is a 75, but you're giving your full effort and all accountabilities, yet you're not hitting that 90 mark, right? Or let's say you're a kid who you're taking all non-regents and basic regents courses and you're getting a 97.
Yep.
So you have another student who's getting AP courses and they're taking all AP and higher levels, and their class rank is lower than the kid with the other one. This is where all the arguments start, right?
Yeah, I get it.
It's a whole can of worms. But again, I was in an urban school district, so also there was different issues and things that came along with that when we made those decisions.
I can see not publishing it on someone's report card, but having it available to them, now that a lot of schools are SAT, ACT optional, like, how does a kid who's doing well kind of distinguish themselves?
So that's where I think
Grades.
so this valedictory class, again, this is a big can of worms.
Has a 99 average.
Yeah.
I will follow the direction of the board on this one.
Well, I think the valedictorian and the salutatorian are historically, traditionally
Yes.
here.
There's some good.
And for us to veer from that at this point, I don't think we need to do.
Yeah.
But I would tell you that, at least what I've read, there's a whole bunch of school districts that are backing away from doing this.
I saw one district name everybody valedictorian.
There you go. That's what I'm
Which
talking
is the
about.
same as.
Me
Participation
personally, I
award.
would not get rid of valedictorian students.
No, I agree.
I like honor graduate too. That's your third one.
I always was confused by, I mean, it's an honor for sure, but it has zero impact, like getting to college or anything, because it happens well after you're accepted
Your
into a
third, it's
college.
your third
Yeah.
market grade,
Yeah.
the fourth market grade never counts.
But I'm not saying it's not an honor.
So we're good
I
with
don't know
looking
the
at
purpose.
the early one, but this one is one that we're gonna probably come back to a few times.
But we're replacing what we have with graduation ceremonies. Are they,
So graduation ceremonies is not this, right?
Yeah,
That'd be
Okay.
that.
Okay.
4771, which is early
and
graduation,
NISBA's.
NISBA's.
is, Not ours.
Yeah, we would probably make NISBA's a 47 something, or we would make ours, make that our 4771 and make this a different policy now. So it's
So
just.
early
it's-
graduation,
Yeah, it'd just be reorganizing our policy manual.
I'm just seeing what NISBA wrote.
Yeah.
The Board of Education shall grant students who wish to graduate from high school in less than the ordinary four-year sequence the permission to complete on an alternative schedule. All normal graduation requirements must be met. Students graduating early shall be ranked with the graduating class.
And you don't need this, this is a notice, so,
4771.
yeah, it says it's a notice, so it's not required. Because we have
I
kids that
just
do
have
it.
heard of a few people in our community who felt, and I don't know to say, I don't know facts, this is all hearsay, that different people were treated differently for possibilities of early graduation. Now, if that's the case and it is what it is and it's just a one-off, that's fine. If a policy would help administration, that's fine. I don't feel strongly either way.
I
mean, if
I
you
like
guys want it to
policies.
Back you up.
I like policies because policies give you something to work from.
I mean, in general, we're okay with people graduating early if they qualify or.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there
I
have been
mean,
many that I know.
Right. I thought so too. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything.
How about I take this one, we call it draft, and then I also share this with
Okay.
the people that
Yeah.
directly work with this the most.
that'd be good.
I mean, for some people, this is a very good option. I've also known some families where the child just was struggling and they needed to just move forward.
Early
Finish
matriculation
up
in the school, yeah.
And this helped them.
Yeah,
move on.
another semester is not gonna help.
All right, I'll take care of that then. So,
Okay, so all the graduation ones
I
basically.
gotta bring it to the team. Yep.
And then, okay. All right, so we'll look at those at our next meeting, which is in a few weeks in May.
Maybe.
And it's late, so.
Good.
I guess for code of conduct, if everyone could be aware that, and I'll tell Arjun when she can come back. Frank and his team have been working really hard on getting the code of conduct ready, the 5300. And you're doing a district advisory committee, the building
Yeah,
principal.
so, yeah,
And there's a draft out there if anyone wants to take a look
and
of an overlay of NISBA's versus ours, Tim.
Which one we talking about now?
5,300.
The overall code of conduct that we'll have to have ready for our July hearing.
Oh, yeah,
And
I did
any-
look at that.
Yeah, and anything in
Yeah,
orange,
that's the one that's very
That's
extensive.
huge.
Yeah, huge. I love
we've
it.
done a lot of work on that.
So I think on our own time, as a committee, we're gonna need to go in and start looking at that.
The orange comments have been given to me by parents and or students. And they're just kind of thought-provoking comments for a conversation that I want to share with my team as well. But those are ones that other people did. Otherwise, if you look at iterations of 5,300, Mrs. Drotz went through and, basically updated it using the NISBA one that just came out and overlapped it to ours. Took out what was outdated in ours, added what was new in NISBA. So it really aligns with NISBA's recommendation for a code
Okay.
of conduct now.
All the highlighted sections.
Yep.
Who highlighted them?
Jen did. Mrs. Drotz, yep.
And the highlights mean.
The highlight meaning.
The highlight is, so let me, here, I'm gonna show you this, ready?
Okay.
So I'm gonna go up here. Oh, that's student searches, I'm sorry. I did that one too. But here we go. Draft, 5,300 draft admin
Oh,
revisions.
I get yours. Just do it.
Yeah, student searches is one that I highlighted.
Okay.
So here is this. So Jen has went through and did these. This is my parent.
It's not sure, yeah.
I gotta go to view, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anybody, here it is. File.
Oh, this is right. Yeah.
File, where's the one that shows, oh, there it is, okay. Just took a second. So if you look over to the right here, my computer, that's slow. Jen wrote, maintain a culture of mutual respect and dignity for all students. And I click on it, it added that, because that's where NISBA had theirs. So she put in where the NISBA recommendations were. It's going very slow, sorry, it's not showing it. But she added all of those. The highlight orange is the parent. Version history.
I found what she added, the maintain a climate, it's
Yeah.
on page 7.
Yep. So I'm sorry, it's, if I look at different version histories,
Well, I think there's a policy discussion here, not just a draft discussion about our commitment to restorative practices. Because NISBA is all in.
Yeah.
And I know, I've known that since I worked there. We used to have great discussions about, you know, to what extent restorative practices are going to be useful. And there were big debates about this. And the people that are in charge over there now were all in on restorative practices. I think there's a value to it, and I do think that the intent is good. And I like the idea of bringing people to the table. And I like the idea of the person who might be the perpetrator owning up to their responsibilities, owning up to where they might have been at fault and how they've harmed others. I think that's all good. But there are times when that is not going to be the methodology that's going to work best. And I need, again, some discretion there. I'm going to tell you, there's going to be some teachers at work here. I'm going to say, you're going to make me have this kid in my classroom time after time after time who just can't abide by the rules.
so there is discretion in this policy, there's discipline in this policy, and it's there.
It's there.
Yeah, but also there's laws that about how long you can take a child out of a classroom for.
Right.
And just because the teacher doesn't want to teach a child doesn't mean they
No,
can be
I'm-
removed.
and I'm not trying to-
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, this policy is the one that we're currently following already. There's just a few things added that as restorative, but there's still suspensions, detentions.
Well, I remember teachers, people at NICEP telling me how they were upset about, when this first came on, they're upset about some of these restorative practices because they felt as if the teacher is no longer in charge of the classroom, the kid is. And I'm not going to be able to do anything to, for the rest of the students who are behaving themselves and are attentive to the studies, because we have this one kid who's out of control. And all I can do is just say, well, let's have a sit down and a come to Jesus circle.
So that's not what's in our code of conduct as far as I can see. Do you see that in there, Tim? Where
No.
restorative practices are?
I just want to be careful
Okay.
that we don't go too far down that.
Well, we're not there.
Okay.
So I think the conversation about restorative practices is the restorative practice of having a conversation with students of what they did wrong and how we get through that.
Mhm.
But in this code of conduct, there's still the ability of discipline
Okay.
and penalties and infraction. So I don't think it's,
You see it that way.
I don't see restorative practices in here as much as, like, a restorative practice, if you're not familiar with complete restorative justice, is if a student tells a teacher to go blank, 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 or there's a fight in school. Instead of doing a full suspension or doing those things that you typically have in your code of conduct, you do a mediation. You do a circle between the two students, they sign a code of conduct, and the next day they're back in your classroom. That is, and again, that's the nth degree of a restorative practice, but they do a circle, they have the teacher goes in, they come to an agreement, and then the kid's back. That's full on, kind of, right, in the short term, that's full on restorative practices. That's not where this code of conduct leaves us. This code of conduct, in my opinion, what I see is that it still gives the ability for discipline, structure, and everything else, with the ability to also have conversations with students.
Do I have to have the conversation before I do anything else?
It depends on the infraction.
Okay.
Right? Child has a knife in school, you know, or it's threatening violence, then I'm not going to have a conversation. There's going to be a discipline, right? And then you have the conversation if there's a violent issue. If it's I didn't want to be in Mrs. Putman's class because, I don't like her. Well, then let's have a conversation. Then we can have a discipline. Let's see what the root cause is. Because sometimes there's a root cause that you can alleviate and get the student on the right track.
Typically, the restorative practices that I was familiar with, it's like student on student. A fight.
Yeah.
A dispute. Something occurred where two people, not including the teacher, were having a problem. One caused harm to the other, perhaps, maybe it was mutual, but we gotta sit down and talk about it. And we're gonna work this out. We're gonna come to an agreement as to how we're gonna resolve our problems. That's the way this is supposed to work.
And there's no discipline?
Well, that's the point that I was always worried about, because what if that doesn't work?
So there's always an infraction of some sort. Like, I know in our school district, if there is something that's happened like that here, I've seen it. There's an infraction, there's a penalty, right, that comes with it. So there's a disposition and an infraction. And then after the infraction, when you have the ability to work it through, then they do a mediation, or they do a no contact agreement, or they do those things to be able to make sure you're not having that same thing. Because what I've seen in other school districts that don't have restorative practice, and so you always got to have, I like the balance of both. That's where I live.
I agree.
Is I've seen it where somebody does only the suspension. Okay, you two fought. Okay, great. You're going to be suspended 5 days. Then they come back to school. They're in school again, and then a day later they're fighting again, right?
Right.
If there's no restorative aspect to that, you're just creating a cycle.
Agreed.
So there's that balance, and I believe that's what we have here in this district. Is I think there's a balance that they're working towards in both.
And I could see where this would work here in Voorheesville. There's some districts probably where you've worked before where having restorative little discussion circles might be a little difficult thing to have.
Where I work, it was both. There was a balance between both of those, and that's where we saw our suspension numbers actually drop when we did that with the ability of restorative practices on it. We saw, and it was for typically suspended or the segregated students, inclusivity and equity issues, where our suspension numbers were traditionally high. When we added restorative practices and suspension, we saw our infractions go down.
This policy, as you see it, and I'm asking you to generalize here. Would your staff support this?
They do currently. There's not major changes in that.
Okay. That's all I needed.
Yeah. I don't see major changes in this.
So RG, we were down to code of conduct. And
Maybe the dress code. Not everybody agrees with the dress code policy.
yeah.
So I have to admit that one. So there are some people that don't agree with it, but.
On the code of conduct, there's a draft out there that we'll probably have to, as a community, try to look at on our own.
Sure.
And Jen Droughts has done all the work of updating all the NISBA sections, so that's already out there. And then Frank has been working with his team and the district advisory committee, which you're on.
Yeah.
And he added some
I gotta check.
comments from that group are in orange.
Yeah, they were sending me emails and personal comments, and I added them to it.
So if we as a group can try to start looking at that on our own, and then when we come to our next meeting, if people have anything in particular they want to talk about. And then in a detailed way, the 5300.6 Code of Conduct student searches, Frank created a draft that kind of uses part of Voorheesville's, part of NISBA's, and part of Shen's.
Yeah.
But we don't have time to do today.
Now, remember, Shen has an SRO too. So they drafted theirs based off of having an online on-school premises officer. So I took bits and pieces of that, but also did it in a way that doesn't have one, right? So you're not inviting it. And NISBA actually changed theirs as well. So there's a couple changes in theirs.
So there is a draft in our shared folder. Everyone can try to take a look before our next meeting. Also, the student harassment and bullying, the 0115, there's a draft that combines Voorheesville's and NISBA's.
Ours was almost exactly the same.
Yeah,
as
so there's not much there, but NISBA had some recommended updates with law. And then the same with 0100, equal opportunity and non-discrimination. We have the NISBA one out there. But all this will have to eventually get ready for that July hearing, so we'll have to start really making sure we're okay with these.
So
But
we need to tackle those at our next meeting.
Yeah.
we do, but it's gonna take some work out of committee meeting, I think, to just read through and make notes, and then we can maybe talk to those
And
notes.
then you can bring them back and then I can do it. And then if we do that back and forth for a couple months, I think we'll be better.
So do we want to exchange drafts before the May
If you use,
meeting?
Google and comment on it, that might be the better options.
Okay.
Cause then we can say, suggest this, or how about this?
Okay,
And then, it can be a running document is what Google is.
Yeah.
And we're not meeting or having a discussion regarding it, so I think it doesn't fall into open
Okay.
forum. You're just adding your comment to the Google document, so then I can better serve the board by making a policy that meets those needs and answers those questions.
Okay, good.
So I don't think you're violating anything.
so our next meeting is May 3rd, so it's a couple weeks. So Tim, are you comfortable looking in Google Docs and making comments within?
Maybe.
Okay,
I mean, if I can technically do it, I'm fine with it.
okay.
Yeah.
not,
If you need
just
help,
make
Not
paper notes.
objecting in any.
Okay.
If you need some training on it, Tim, I'll help you.
Okay, and the last thing is I just been keeping that running list of future things based on what we've been doing. Frank and I were kind of looking at it, we're like, you know what, come June, we'll take a deep look and parse that out to be what we want it to be.
Yeah.
For now, I just kept the running list so we wouldn't forget anything. I did quickly look at the NISBA second quarter update, which I had emailed to all of you, and I kind of listed them there. There was one section, the 4321.5 confidentiality with IEPs. That was a required update. So if we are trying to prioritize, I guess we would look at that one first, if everyone's okay with that, of course.
Sounds good.
Did we cover everything,
Busy
Frank,
committee,
that we were
yeah.
hoping to cover?
Yeah, I think
I think we should keep this group together for the next school year, since except Talia,
Yeah.
you're welcome to come back.
no, I feel it's a high functioning group right now.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we've got a lot in progress,
Mhm.
so.
That would be helpful, although I guess we don't want to exclude people if there's someone dying to be
Well,
on
if someone's
policy.
dying to be
I
on.
don't know
And
why.
I nominate you as chair.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Tim.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I like this committee very much so.
I think we worked well.
It's got a lot of meat on the bone here.
I have to say it's the best policy committee I've ever been on.
Oh, you just.
There you go, there it is.
Just disrupted some apples.
Uh-huh.
You set yourself up for.
In any other district I've ever run
There
in.
you go.
There we go.
Anything else? Always, you can reach out. Is there anything right now that anyone's seeing we need to make sure we get on this list for our next meeting that we haven't discussed today?
No.
No. Okay, and Kelly, you said you won't be with us next meeting?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for enduring today. Thank you, everybody. Okay,
Going back